Chapter 63. The temptation of this offer was really great. Whether it was status, salary, or development prospects, it greatly exceeded Poplar Fruit's expectations, so Poplar Fruit hesitated for a long time. But after thinking about it, Poplar Fruit shook his head. In fact, for the poor Poplar Fruit in the past, it was impossible for him to refuse such a great opportunity. But now it was different. Poplar Fruit was a young stay-at-home father, and after spending more than 3 months with Kiki, he found that even a dream job could not sway his decision to accompany his daughter to grow up healthily and happily. Moreover, Poplar Fruit also liked the current freedom. He did not need others to tell him what to do, he could do what he wanted to do, and he could have the time to learn new knowledge. This kind of life was plain but happy, simple but fulfilling. Even if Poplar Fruit was offered 1,000 taels of gold, he would not be willing to exchange it for it. Is the salary not high enough? Yao Dehua asked anxiously. Seeing Yao Dehua's somewhat depressed expression, Poplar Fruit explained to him, "No, brother Yao, the salary you give me is already very good. I refuse not because of the salary. You may not know, but I am currently raising my daughter alone, and I have no time to work. This is also the reason why I resigned from my previous foreign trade company." Poplar Fruit briefly introduced his current living situation to Yao Dehua. "Besides," Poplar Fruit laughed, "Brother Yao, you think too highly of me, but I don't think I am a management talent. If you give me a department to manage, I don't know where to start." Poplar Fruit's honesty eased Yao Dehua's expression. He poured himself and Poplar Fruit some hot tea and smiled. "No one is born a management talent, this is all slowly cultivated. But little Yang, since you said so, I won't force you. Haha. Come, have some tea." Yao Dehua excitedly pushed a basket of pastries in front of Poplar Fruit and said, "Try the barbecued pork buns here. You can't find anything more authentic in Yongqing." Poplar Fruit picked one up and took a bite. His eyes lit up as he gave a thumbs up and said, "Delicious." Although he didn't know what was authentic, this roast pork bun was indeed much more delicious than the ones he had eaten before. The dough was warm and soft, and the filling was rich and fragrant. Yao Dehua smiled. "Eat more if you like." The two of them then talked about Yao Dehua's idea of being a mercenary. Poplar Fruit was very appreciative of this way of doing business. His words struck a chord with Yao Dehua, and Yao Dehua was even happier. It was rare for Yao Dehua to meet such a good listener, so he began to talk to Poplar Fruit about his struggles over the years. Yao Dehua's story could be written into an inspirational novel. He was born into a family of translators, and his family had a company. The person who made the company the number one in Guangdong province was his brother. When he was young, Yao Dehua grew up under his brother's shadow. Every day, he would hear praises for his brother. Even in the company, he had to bow down to his brother. More than a decade ago, Cinda Company wanted to open up the translation market, and Yao Dehua volunteered. Without any foundation or help, he forcefully pulled out a team and fought a bloody path out of the oligopoly formed by the 3 major translation companies. Finally, he completed the counterattack. The process was difficult and tortuous, and it couldn't be explained in a few words. After more than a decade of development, Yao Dehua finally didn't have to look up to his brother's achievements. Poplar Fruit helped him cross the last hurdle, and it also drew a perfect end to his victory. The independence of the translation company was a new beginning for Yao Dehua. This time, he finally got rid of his brother's control and the shackles of his family. He held 60% of the shares of the new company. It could be said that Yao Dehua's next step was to fight for himself. The two chatted, one was enraptured, and the other was dazzled. They chatted for 2 hours, and it was as if they regretted not having met earlier. Yao Dehua even drove Poplar Fruit and Kiki home. When they finally left, Yao Dehua still reluctantly put his arm around Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said to Poplar Fruit, "Xiaoyang, you can't leave because of your child, but it's okay. I'll leave a position for you. Within 2 years, if you want, you can come to me at any time." Poplar Fruit was also a little moved, and he said, "Okay, brother Yao, if I really want to work, I'll choose your company first." "Haha, I'll wait for you. I really hope to fight for the country with you." Yao Dehua laughed and said goodbye to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit watched Yao Dehua's car disappear at the corner of the road, and then he turned to go home. Poplar Fruit smiled as he pushed the cart back. He sighed in his heart. Today, he had met a boss worthy of being friends with. Yao Dehua was born into a rich family, but he did not have the aura of a playboy, and he was still able to achieve such great results. Poplar Fruit did not know why, but he suddenly thought of Han Tao, who was driven back to the countryside. He shook his head. They were all rich second generations, but how could there be such a big difference between people? Back home, Poplar Fruit fed Kiki milk, and then spread a carpet on the floor of the living room for Kiki to lie on. Now that Kiki was more than 3 months pregnant, it was time for her to practice turning over. It could also be considered as the beginning of her contact with sports. Poplar Fruit's method was different from others, and others could not learn it. He spread his legs and lay down in a push-up position. His left hand was on Kiki's left side, and his right hand was suspended in the air. Then he used his left hand to support himself and did push-ups. Kiki was also interested in watching her father's face become bigger and bigger, and then slowly move away. She smiled and raised her little hand high, wanting to reach her father's mouth. Poplar Fruit would not let her do as she wished. Every time he did a push-up and bent down, he would use his empty right hand to turn Kiki over. Kiki would tirelessly turn back, just wanting to touch her father. After doing 10 push-ups with his left hand, Poplar Fruit switched to his right hand and went to Kiki's right side. Kiki liked this kind of game very much. Every time her father turned her over, she would burst into laughter. Then she would quickly turn over and wait for her father to turn her over again. Poplar Fruit switched from his left hand to his right hand, and then from his right hand to his left hand, and did push-ups with one hand for almost 20 minutes. Even Poplar Fruit's arm would feel sore with this amount of exercise, but as long as he saw Kiki's big innocent eyes, Poplar Fruit would feel invigorated again. It was already hot outside today, and after coming back and doing so much exercise, Poplar Fruit's clothes were wet and dry, and his whole body was sticky. He could not wait to take a cold shower immediately. But now there was a little ancestor in front of him to entertain. Poplar Fruit had to prepare hot water for her to take a bath first. Although it had been less than half a month since he cut Kiki's hair, Poplar Fruit was surprised to find that Kiki's hair had grown a lot. Originally, except for the part on the top of her head that was deliberately long, the rest of her hair was so short that her scalp could be seen. Today, Poplar Fruit paid attention to it and found that it was almost as long as half a knuckle. Kiki's hair was very good, which was probably a combination of Poplar Fruit's and Wu Yu's characteristics. Poplar Fruit's hair was very black, and it was not interrupted. Kiki's hair was now pure black, and it was no longer mixed with light yellow fetal hair like before. Kiki's hair was very soft, and even the hair stubble that had just grown out did not feel prickly to the touch. Poplar Fruit had seen Wu Yu's appearance when she was alive. Her hair was just like the shampoo commercials on TV. It was so soft that if you put a comb on it, it would slide down by itself. He hoped that when Kiki grew up in the future, she would also grow beautiful long hair like a waterfall. Poplar Fruit gently dried Kiki's hair with a towel, and the soft towel gently rubbed Kiki's ears. Kiki obediently lay in Poplar Fruit's arms without moving. Her pair of eyes that were as clean and clear as the sky lake in Chongbai Mountain looked at her father lovingly. One of her small hands tightly grasped the corner of her father's clothes, and the other small hand hugged her father's thick waist. She felt very at ease. It was as if her father's head was the sky, his thighs were the earth, and her father's embrace was the world. Poplar Fruit did not know why, but he thought of a poem he had seen online. When my hair reaches my waist, will the young man marry me? When your black hair is straight, will you be willing to spread 10 miles of red dowry? But if your hair reaches your waist, the young man will fall in love with someone else. When your black hair is straight, I will smile at her smiling face in your arms. He Xiaodao's 10 miles of red dowry? A daughter's dream. After repeating it a few times in his heart, Poplar Fruit felt that his nose was a little sour. When your hair reaches your waist, your father will have already become old. When your hair reaches your waist, you will be about to get married. How can your father bear to watch you go away? Without you, how can your father live? Kiki, when your hair reaches your waist, will it be better if you don't grow up? Poplar Fruit repeated it in his heart, but he also knew that this was just wishful thinking. That was just his wild imagination. How can there be a father whose daughter was only 3 months old and was already afraid of her getting married? Poplar Fruit, that's enough. With this thought, he dried her hair for a long time. In the end, even Kiki could not help but protest. Poplar Fruit then realized that he had thought too far ahead. He looked at Kiki's innocent face and smiled awkwardly. After wiping her body clean, he quickly carried her back to the room to change her clothes. Actually, Poplar Fruit's situation was not difficult to understand. 2 or 3 months ago, Poplar Fruit and Lu Yunran broke up, saying goodbye to his first love of 4 years. After that, he had been in unbearable pain. Suddenly, there was one person who was incomparably important to him in his life. There was even a period of time when he was absent-minded, as if he had lost his spiritual support. Later, Kiki's serious illness made Poplar Fruit completely understand, so he shifted the focus of his life to Kiki. Although he did things that he would never have imagined doing for Kiki all day long, Poplar Fruit was in a happy mood. Even if he had to wake up in the middle of the night in a daze, he was willing to do it. If Poplar Fruit was compared to a planet like Earth, then Kiki was the sun that it revolved around. If the sun suddenly disappeared, they would not be able to survive. Kiki was also important to Poplar Fruit. Although Kiki was now very attached to Poplar Fruit and could not leave him when she was awake, Poplar Fruit was also attached to Kiki and enjoyed the happy and sad times with Kiki. Poplar Fruit did not dare to imagine if his life could continue if Kiki left. This was also the reason why he felt like his heart was being cut by a knife when he thought of Kiki getting married. Looking at Kiki, who had become beautiful after putting on her clothes, Poplar Fruit bent down with a smile and kissed her little face. Perhaps they kissed for too long. Poplar Fruit's hair was pulled by Kiki. Although it was a little painful, listening to Kiki's happy laughter made Poplar Fruit's heart as sweet as honey. Chi-Chi, you're an angel that the heavens have bestowed upon Daddy. Daddy will always protect you. Chapter 64. Time ticked by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the beginning of August. The college entrance examination results were basically out. Every year, the college entrance examination was like 1,000 soldiers and horses trying to squeeze through a wooden bridge. Some people succeeded, while others fell off the bridge. They could only wait patiently and wait for the next year to try again. These days, Poplar Fruit went online and found that Weibo and the news were dominated by college entrance examination fans. Many people posted their results and admission results, looking forward to the beautiful 4 years of college life. However, Poplar Fruit knew that there were many people who were sad and hiding away to lick their wounds. Life was like this. You couldn't expect it to be smooth sailing. You could only pray that you could stand on the winning side. You didn't need to cover your ears with a pillow to block out the sound of firecrackers outside the window. You didn't need to look at other people's comforting smiles, because it all looked so ironic and you looked so pathetic. Poplar Fruit was considered lucky that he didn't become one of the people who were squeezed out. Of course, this wasn't about the college entrance examination. Today, he received a message from Ingyen Web again. The message said that he had passed the recruitment examination for sect leader Qiao's biography. This time, someone called him to congratulate him for being one of the 10 people who made it to the top 10 in the second round of the examination. Next was the final round of the examination. The person who contacted him explained to Poplar Fruit that as long as he passed the final round of the examination, he could become one of the translators for the Chinese version of sect leader Qiao's biography. Thinking about it, Poplar Fruit was a little excited. However, it was useless to be excited. The final round of the examination didn't start immediately. The person who contacted Poplar Fruit sent a contract to Poplar Fruit. This was the confidentiality agreement for the final round of the examination. As the final round of the examination involved the translation of part of the original manuscript, it couldn't be sloppy. The organizers had to prevent translators who didn't pass this round from leaking the manuscript. Good things come with setbacks. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and comforted himself. He went out and printed out the confidentiality agreement, signed it, and sent it back to Ingyen Web. Now he could only wait. Poplar Fruit returned home and continued his translation work. A few days ago, he received another big order. It was a promotional material for a medical institution. This medical institution wanted to participate in an exhibition abroad to promote TCM equipment and medicine, so they specially made gorgeous posters and brochures to impress the purchasing staff of foreign hospitals. But they never thought that how could foreigners understand the slogans that they put together with classical Chinese and ancient poems? They had also looked for many translation companies to help them translate, but they either translated directly, which made others confused, or the translation quality was still not satisfactory after the translators had processed it. Speaking of which, the translation company couldn't be blamed for this. This medical institution's promotional materials were not ordinary industry technical documents. It was simply a literary work of more than 20,000 words. Moreover, it was not an ordinary literary work. It read in a genteel way, with all kinds of ancient Chinese allusions in it. Even Poplar Fruit felt a bit of a headache when reading it, let alone the translators of ordinary translation companies. They hit a wall again and again, and finally found Yao Dehua. They hoped to get a satisfactory translation within a week. They were indeed in the medical field, and they were all big tycoons. They directly offered a price of 1,000 yuan per 1,000 words. Yao Dehua hesitated for a long time before accepting it. Many companies had been defeated by this order, and Yao Dehua also knew that. The industry had already been abuzz for a long time. Some companies who were not convinced even said that this promotional material was simply untranslatable, and whoever accepted it was an idiot. The entire translation industry in Guangdong province was waiting to see which other company would be defeated by this order. Yao Dehua understood that challenges and opportunities coexisted. If he accepted this order, he would either succeed or die trying. If he failed, he might become the topic of conversation after dinner and become another joke in the industry. But what if he really succeeded? He would give a big slap to those who wanted to laugh at him. Not only that, Xinda Translation Company could also take advantage of this opportunity to set a benchmark in the industry. In the future, who wouldn't know that Xinda Translation Company was the most powerful translation company in Guangdong province? After accepting this task, Yao Dehua let the company's 4 gold translators take a look. They all shook their heads, saying that this task was too difficult, and they were not confident that they could translate a satisfactory result. Wu Pings walked into Yao Dehua's office worriedly and asked him with a sigh, "Boss, isn't it too risky to accept this task? We actually don't lack this 20,000 yuan." Yao Dehua rubbed his bald head and said with a wry smile, "Of course, I'm not going for the money. Although our company has been registered, it hasn't been announced to the outside world. This is a big opportunity. If it's successful, our reputation will really be established. It's just that I didn't expect that even you guys don't have the confidence. I feel that this step is too big, and I'm afraid that it will pull the balls. Boss, why don't we look for Poplar Fruit?" Wu Ping said. "Can he do it?" Yao Dehua asked. "I've seen a few of his tasks before, and I feel that he is still very good at literary translation. Besides, we have no other better way than looking for him. If Poplar Fruit can't do it, I'm sure that no one in Guangdong province can do it." Yao Dehua nodded and said, "Okay, I'll call him and tell him. By the way, didn't you say that he was doing a task last time? You guys should be prepared to take over. The reward for the task will still be given to Poplar Fruit. Whoever does it, the company will also have additional subsidies. The most important thing now is to finish this task first." So, this task was finally handed over to Poplar Fruit. To be honest, although this task was also 1,000 yuan per 1,000 words, it was not simpler than the 100,000 yuan task last time. When Poplar Fruit saw this document for the first time, he was dizzy. His eyes were full of literary words, which he had never seen before in his career as a translator. However, Poplar Fruit did not back down. Instead, he rubbed his hands and felt very excited. The more challenging it was, the more interesting it would be. Flipping through those technical documents every day was like copying a book. It was really easy to memorize a paragraph and rewrite it. It was rare to encounter such a task that he could use his brain. How could Poplar Fruit not feel happy? Of course, although he was very happy, Poplar Fruit still paid attention to this document. It was indeed a document that had stumped countless translators. Poplar Fruit read it carefully. There were more than 100 sentences in more than 20,000 words that could not be translated directly. After marking these sentences, Poplar Fruit categorized them into two categories: those that could be replaced with foreign allusions and those that could not be replaced. Poplar Fruit had also frantically searched the internet for allusions that matched the meaning of the former. Some of them were too obscure and could not be found, so he had to categorize them into the latter category. The latter was the most difficult translation of the entire document. Poplar Fruit also racked his brains and constantly tried various translation techniques. In order to make the meaning clear, the order of some sentences was even messed up by Poplar Fruit. Even so, Poplar Fruit still spent a long time smoothing out these 100 sentences. Including today, Poplar Fruit took a total of 4 days. Fortunately, after doing all this, the rest was much simpler. Poplar Fruit only needed to translate the remaining 10,000 words and then make some adjustments. Poplar Fruit, who had been busy for the whole day, could finally breathe a sigh of relief and give himself some time to rest and adjust. Tonight, Kiki was particularly active. He did not know if it was because she slept too much during the day, but she still did not feel sleepy at 8 o'clock. Poplar Fruit wanted to carry her back to the bedroom to sleep, but she desperately struggled, unwilling to lie on the bed alone. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to carry her to the living room. He spread a blanket in the middle of the living room and let her lie down and play on it. Poplar Fruit was holding a book and reading by the side, his left hand still supporting Kiki. Although Kiki did not know how to crawl yet, Poplar Fruit was still worried that she would accidentally roll somewhere else. It would be troublesome if she bumped into something. Kiki was happily twisting and turning on the blanket. She found that she could not get rid of her father's big hand no matter how hard she tried, so she simply lay down on the blanket, biting the pacifier while playing with her father's hand. Kiki's hand was still very small. She could only hold one section of her father's finger, but she was still playing with her father's left hand excitedly. She was not tired of playing with her father's left hand. Ouch! Poplar Fruit was reading the book when he suddenly felt a sudden pain in his palm. He could not help but retract his hand. Poplar Fruit turned his left palm over and looked at it carefully. There was a long red mark, and there was even a thin line of blood oozing out. Kiki, who was the culprit, was still waving her small hand proudly. If she was not biting the pacifier, Poplar Fruit believed that she would definitely laugh out loud. This girl. Poplar Fruit touched his hand. It did not hurt anymore, but he did not expect that his skin was rough and thick. She actually scratched his skin. It was only 3 months, and her fingernails were already so long. Poplar Fruit held Kiki in his arms, picked up one of her arms, and placed a small hand on his right palm with his right hand to examine it carefully. Sure enough, Kiki's fingernails had grown out. She was now like a kitten that did not retract her claws. As long as she pressed them on Poplar Fruit's skin, they would leave a deep mark. If she casually scratched his body, with Kiki's current delicate skin, wouldn't she hurt him? Poplar Fruit was a little scared when he thought about it. Moreover, when her fingernails grew out, it would be easy for her to get dirty. Now that she had a pacifier, it was better. If she was like before, biting her fingers every day, who knew how many germs she had ingested? He could not delay any longer. Half an hour later, Kiki was finally tired and fell asleep. Poplar Fruit took out a nail clipper from the drawer and ran to the kitchen to rinse it repeatedly with water. In the end, he was still not satisfied, so he took out some alcohol from the cupboard to disinfect it again. Kiki lay on the sofa and slept soundly. Poplar Fruit knelt on the floor. He pulled Kiki's small hand and held it in his own. Poplar Fruit placed his arm on his thigh to prevent his hand from shaking and pinching Kiki's flesh. Separating her fingers, Poplar Fruit began to cut from her index finger. He did not dare to cut too short, so he left a little bit. Then, he tried to cut as curved as possible. He touched it with his left thumb and then trimmed the parts that were not smooth. Poplar Fruit took almost 5 minutes to cut the first finger. After that, he became more skilled. After cutting all the fingernails, Poplar Fruit stood up and found that his feet were numb. Poplar Fruit found a wet towel and wiped Kiki's 2 small hands that had just been cut. He smiled with satisfaction. Great. It was like a piece of art. Poplar Fruit, you're amazing, he thought proudly in his heart. Chapter 65. In August, because of the typhoon, there were a few heavy rains, and the weather was finally not so hot. The typhoon had just passed. Taking advantage of the fact that there were still a few clouds floating in the sky and the summer heat hadn't recovered, Song Jiwen ran over to Poplar Fruit and wanted to organize a hiking trip. Poplar Fruit, who stayed at home in front of the computer all day, felt that he was going to go crazy from staying at home, so he immediately agreed. However, it was better to have fun together than to have fun alone. Moreover, if only Poplar Fruit went alone, he would become a third wheel between Song Jiwen and Kitten. Therefore, Poplar Fruit also called Duan Shueching. Early on Saturday morning, Song Jiwen drove the car, took Poplar Fruit and Kiki to the market to buy some things, and then picked up Duan Shueching and Kitten. The 5 of them drove to Baiyun Mountain. At the foot of Baiyun Mountain, Song Jiwen bought the tickets and drove the car to the parking lot. Since they were here to hike, there was no need to drive up. After getting out of the car, Poplar Fruit took the biggest backpack from Song Jiwen's hand and carried it. The others also carried a backpack. Song Jiwen's neck also hung a big SLR camera. Duan Shueching walked beside Poplar Fruit and looked at the backpack that was as big as a hiking backpack. She asked with some concern, "Brother Yong, is this heavy? Do you want to put some in my bag? I don't have many things." "It's okay. He is strong now." Song Jiwen smiled and walked past them with Kitten. Poplar Fruit held Kiki in front of his chest with a strap. She just woke up and looked at the unfamiliar environment in a daze. Her head leaned on her father's chest and felt the heartbeat that made her feel safe. Poplar Fruit smiled and weighed the backpack on his back. He said to Duan Shueching, "It's okay. It's not that heavy. Let's go." With Song Jiwen leading the way, they slowly climbed up the stone steps on the left side of the driveway. The sky was a little gloomy today, but there was no sign of rain. This kind of weather was perfect for traveling. As they climbed up the mountain path, a gentle breeze caressed them. The lush trees on the mountain swayed with the wind, as if welcoming their arrival. Last night, a heavy rain seemed to have fallen on Mount Baiyun. Looking from afar, one could only see clouds and mist lingering around the mountain. It was as if one had arrived at the abode of an immortal. Climbing the mountain would definitely be a very tiring thing if one just kept climbing. Poplar Fruit and the others didn't come just for exercise. So every time they arrived at a new scenic spot, Song Jiwen would ask everyone to come and take photos. Other than taking photos together, most of the time, Poplar Fruit would help him and Kitten take photos. Because Poplar Fruit was carrying Kiki and many bags, it was a little inconvenient. Duan Shueching was introverted and wouldn't jump around like Kitten. Whenever she saw something new, she would ask Song Jiwen to help her take photos. Of course, Song Jiwen would also have a smirk on his face. He would push Poplar Fruit and Duan Shueching together and let the 2 of them stand together to take photos. Kiki was very excited about taking photos. Every time the camera pointed at her, the corners of her mouth would curl up happily. However, Poplar Fruit and Duan Shueching weren't so natural. Especially when Song Jiwen asked the 2 of them to pose very intimately, Poplar Fruit was completely stiff. Although Kitten laughed and jumped around to add fuel to the fire, Poplar Fruit just leaned against Duan Shueching for the photo. He wouldn't go any further. After a few rounds, Duan Shueching and Kitten's cheeks were red. However, Kitten's cheeks were red because she was too excited and tired from jumping around. Duan Shueching's cheeks were red because she was shy and couldn't stand it. She looked at Poplar Fruit and didn't dare to look directly into his eyes. Taking photos was only a small interlude throughout the entire journey. Poplar Fruit and the others didn't stop walking and kept walking forward. When they arrived at the Pu Valley, they crossed the rippling lotus pond from the small bridge. From afar, they could see one of the 8 ancient sceneries of Yongcheng, Pu Jian Lian Quan. The mountain stream gurgled and flowed slowly down the valley's steep rocks. Some tourists couldn't help but take off their shoes and jump in. The water only reached up to their ankles. However, now wasn't the best time to play in the water. If it was during a hot day, the clear and cool mountain spring would definitely attract more people to go into the water to cool off. Even so, the intertwined trees in the mountains were like a canopy, covering this place like a paradise. There was also sunlight that shone through the thin gaps. Everywhere it went, there were clusters of flowers, and among the dense greenery there were a few spots of pink. Only then did it not appear too cold and monotonous. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, it couldn't slow down the pace of Poplar Fruit and the others. After taking a few photos, they continued to walk forward. They hadn't gone far from the Pooh Valley when Poplar Fruit and the others saw an old temple. The small archway entered their eyes first. From right to left, the words Buddhist Realm were written on it. On the back, the words Repent and Be Saved were written. This is Nangren Temple, Song Jiwen introduced. However, there are no monks here anymore. Like the other scenic spots of Mount Baiyun, almost all the buildings here were rebuilt after the liberation. During the anti-Japanese war, the Japanese invaded Yongcheng and the cultural relics on Mount Baiyun were destroyed along with the hills and trees. After the reconstruction, there were no monks who continued to cultivate here. However, this was also good. Without the smell of incense, the air of Mount Baiyun, which was known as the lung of the city, was better protected. Therefore, instead of calling the temple a Buddhist treasure land, it was better to call it a historical site that had witnessed history. In the courtyard of the temple, there was a large dark red stone that was constantly being washed by the fountain. The stone was called Dream of the Century. Looking at the introduction, it was transported from the Three Gorges. This made Poplar Fruit a little speechless. It was a large stone that weighed dozens of tons. The kitten pulled Duan Shueching over to take photos intimately. Kiki was also very interested in the big stone and squeaked. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to go over and let her pat the big stone with her small hand. After so many years of washing, the big stone had no dust on it. When Kiki patted it, it was slippery. Although it was clean, her hand was still wet. Poplar Fruit had to take out a tissue to wipe her hand. Poplar Fruit preferred the dragon carvings on the eaves of the temple. The dragon carvings were different from each other, but they were all in the shape of bearing fangs and brandishing claws. The carvings were lifelike. After the baptism of time, the dragon carvings were a little damaged. The color was also stained by rain and moss. After passing Nangren Temple, the mountain road became steep. Poplar Fruit and the others climbed to the next scenic spot. After passing by the Tiannan First Peak, Poplar Fruit and the others came to the square on the top of the mountain. In the square surrounded by heavy guardrails, the kitten, who was walking in front of Song Jiwen, suddenly shouted. Poplar Fruit and the others looked in the direction the kitten was pointing. Only then did they understand why she was so excited. At this time, Poplar Fruit and the others were already on the top of the mountain. As far as the eye could see, the surrounding mountains were shrouded in amiable fog. Just now, when they looked at the mountain from below, they felt that the mountain was like an immortal's cave. Now, they felt as if they were in an immortal's cave. Looking outside, they felt as if they were riding on clouds and mist. White clouds above Baiyun Mountain, white clouds below Baiyun Mountain. Didn't the beautiful scenery in front of them at this moment correspond to this poem? This place was also called White Clouds Looking at the Evening, and it really lived up to its name. Looking into the distance, they could see the whole city of Yongqing. Looking at the faintly visible tall buildings through the fog from afar, it was like looking at a mirage. It was hard to tell whether it was real or fake. There was a rattan chair next to the guardrails. Song Jiwen put the camera in Poplar Fruit's hand and asked him to take photos for him. Song Jiwen swaggered like an evil advisor in ancient times. He sat inside with his legs spread apart, but his wrist was supporting his chin. He deliberately put on a cool expression on his face. The kitten was laughing beside him, which made Song Jiwen angry. The evil advisor sat in the rattan chair and shouted loudly. He forced the ignorant girl into his arms and ravaged her fiercely. As a frontline reporter, Poplar Fruit could not let this evil person succeed. He faithfully recorded all of this with the camera. In the future, he could give it to the kitten to settle accounts with him. After taking a few photos with each other, Song Ji-wen said, "Let's go down." "Ah. We worked so hard to climb up, why are we going down again?" the kitten said with a bitter face. Song Ji-wen explained, "If we go down, we will reach the Spring Valley. If you don't go, you will definitely regret it because there are a lot of birds in there." "Wow. Really? Let's go, let's go." The kitten pulled Song Ji-wen with a face full of surprise and rushed down first. Poplar Fruit shook his head and looked at Duan Shueching with a bitter smile. The two of them followed behind from a distance. Seeing the sweat on Duan Shueching's forehead, Poplar Fruit considerately asked, "Shueching, is this heavy? Let me help you carry it." Duan Shueching looked at Poplar Fruit's sparkling eyes, lowered her head a little shyly, and said softly, "No need, I can do it." Duan Shueching and Poplar Fruit walked side by side, and the passers-by on the road all looked at them. It couldn't be helped. The man was tall and handsome, the woman was beautiful and outstanding, and they even brought along a beautifully dressed cute baby. It was like a big celebrity family going on a trip, making the passers-by envious. "Come over quickly." From afar, the kitten waved at them. Looking at her excited expression, it was as if she had discovered a new continent. Poplar Fruit and Duan Shueching smiled slightly, and the two of them quickly walked up. So many birds. As they got closer, even the usually calm Duan Shueching could not help but exclaim softly. There were indeed a lot of birds. There were many birdhouses built along the road. Some of the houses had nests in the trees, and some didn't even have a nest. "This is a peacock," the kitten called. Everyone followed her line of sight. A peacock with a long tail was leisurely jumping from the ground to a branch half a meter high. It proudly turned its head, and disdained to pay attention to Poplar Fruit and the others. The kitten went up and looked for a long time, then ran back in frustration and said, "Ah, it doesn't even spread its tail. I'm so anxious." Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted her. "Peacocks usually spread their tails in spring. It's very rare for us to see one at this time." However, there were all kinds of birds in the garden, and peacocks were not the only attractive ones. The kitten's attention was quickly diverted. "Everyone, come and see!" Song Ji-wen suddenly shouted. Poplar Fruit and the others all gathered around. "Look, there are big roosters here." Looking carefully, there were 3 big roosters. 2 of them had pure white feathers, but the coxcombs were red like fire. One of them had a chest, abdomen, and tail feathers that were pure black and shiny, but the neck was white and brown. Poplar Fruit, who came from the countryside, recognized the 3 roosters. He said, "These chickens are called Yuan Bao chickens. Look at them, their tails are up and inward, and their necks are high. Don't they look like Yuan Bao?" The kitten nodded vigorously and listened very carefully. "Let's look at the next one. I heard that there are red-crowned cranes." "Let's look for them," Poplar Fruit said. He had just glanced at the introduction at the entrance of Ming Chun Valley. It said, "There are more than 150 species of birds in the garden, including red-crowned cranes, swans, peacocks, yellow-bellied tragopan, blue pheasants, and more than 5,000 birds." Now they had seen the peacocks, but not the red-crowned cranes. Chapter 66. As they walked past a small cage, Poplar Fruit and the others suddenly heard a strange voice, "Hello." Who was greeting them? They turned around to look for the voice, but there was no one around them. "Hello." Just as Poplar Fruit and the others were in shock, the strange voice sounded again. This time, Poplar Fruit found out that it was a black myna in the cage next to them that was talking to them. Seeing the myna stretching its head and looking at them, Kiki became very happy for some reason. She wriggled in Poplar Fruit's arms excitedly, clapping her little hands and squealing loudly. Her crisp voice covered the sporadic chirping of the birds in the park. At this moment, a shocking scene occurred. With Kiki's cheerful voice, the sleepy birds in the park all became excited. They flapped their wings and flew to the corner closest to Kiki. The whole Ming-Chun Valley was drowned in the singing of all kinds of birds. If there were no cages to separate them, they would probably have flown directly to them. "The peacock is spreading its tail," the sharp-eyed kitten shouted, pointing at the peacock that had made her go back in vain. Poplar Fruit looked over. Indeed, the proud peacock was facing them. The feathers on its back were like a folding fan that was slowly spreading out, reflecting the sunlight. It looked very beautiful. Song Jiwen quickly took out his SLR camera and took pictures. The miner next to him did not forget to grab a few shots. It also jumped to the side of the cage, holding the iron wire firmly with its 2 claws, and shouted, "Hello! I love you!" Its strange pronunciation made Poplar Fruit and the others laugh. In their happiness, they forgot that all the commotion was caused by Kiki's cry. When the other tourists saw this rare scene of hundreds of birds paying homage, they all raised their cameras and quickly took pictures of these rare birds while they were showing their most beautiful side. They did not have time to trace the source of the incident. There was also a white parrot dancing excitedly in the cage, trying to attract Kiki's attention. However, after Kiki called out once, she sat quietly on her father's chest and continued to look around. She did not continue to cause a ruckus, so the commotion of the birds gradually subsided. Even the peacock with its tail spread out, after the Poplar Fruit and the others had walked far away, retracted its beautiful tail feathers and hid behind the bushes. The tourists who came up later heard the tourists in front of them talking excitedly about what had just happened. They realized that they had missed such a spectacular scene because they had been lazy on the road. They were full of regret. They beat their chests and stamped their feet, sighing. As they walked down, Poplar Fruit and the others finally saw the red-crowned crane that they had been looking for a long time. These red-crowned cranes seemed to have taken good care of themselves. Their feathers were glossy and glossy. Apart from their throats, necks, tails, and legs which were black and their heads were vermilion red, the rest of their feathers were flawless white. Looking at them walking leisurely in the cage, their postures were simply too elegant. Seeing the tourists coming over, the red-crowned cranes slowly walked over. They looked at Poplar Fruit and the others with gentle eyes. Kitten walked forward, and a red-crowned crane came up to her. It tilted its head and looked at her. In fact, the red-crowned crane wanted her to feed it. This made Kitten very happy. She quickly asked Song Jiwen to take a picture of it for her. Seeing such beautiful creatures, Poplar Fruit could not hold back. He walked forward, squatted down, and greeted the red-crowned cranes with a smile. Kiki saw it and was very happy. She stretched out her hand to get close to the cage, but she could not reach it. She turned back and patted her father's chest gently. "No, you can't touch it. What if it pecks you?" Poplar Fruit gently persuaded Kiki, but Kiki did not care. Seeing that her father was not willing to move, she hummed softly in dissatisfaction. At this time, Poplar Fruit saw that the biggest and most beautiful red-crowned crane came over. It bent its head and retracted its long beak into the cage. However, its round head stretched out, and its red top gently rubbed against the net of the cage. Did it want people to touch it? Poplar Fruit felt that it was a little unbelievable. He had never seen such a considerate red-crowned crane, even in the books. Of course, except in Xianxia novels. Kiki was impatiently rubbing against Poplar Fruit's chest. At this time, her beautiful big eyes were floating with mist. It seemed that if her father did not agree, she would immediately cry in front of him. Poplar Fruit had to slowly bend over with his right hand in front of him, in case the red-crowned crane had any excessive reaction and hurt Kiki. However, he quickly realized that his worries were unnecessary. The red-crowned crane was very quiet. Kiki's small hand gently stroked the red-crowned crane's head, like an elder comforting a junior. Not only was the red-crowned crane not displeased, it even squinted its brown eyes in enjoyment. Kiki was very happy. After retracting her hand, she even patted her father's right hand and giggled. Just as he straightened his back, Poplar Fruit found that the red-crowned cranes in the cage were not calm anymore. Under the lead of the biggest and most beautiful red-crowned crane, they were running and jumping in the not-so-big cage. They jumped in the air, spread their wings, stretched their backs, and raised their heads. The leading red-crowned crane pointed its beak upwards, raised its head to the sky, and spread its wings. Ho! Ho! Song, and the other red-crowned cranes echoed it loudly. They called out to each other, or bent their backs and jumped, or raised their heads and kicked, or spread their wings and walked, or bent their backs and bowed. They danced beautifully, making people feel relaxed and happy. They wished they could grow a pair of wings and join them. This was the crane dance. Poplar Fruit watched for a long time before he was surprised. He had only seen this scene on CCTV's Animal World. Now, he could actually see it with his own eyes in front of such a small cage. It was really rare. Not only Poplar Fruit, but Song Jiwen, Kitten, and Duan Shueching were also stunned. It was not until the crane dance gradually stopped that they recovered from such a beautiful dance. Poplar Fruit turned to Song Jiwen and said, "Mosquito, did you get a picture?" Song Jiwen shook the DSLR in his hand in annoyance and said, "No, I just wanted to see it and forgot to take a picture." "What a pity." Kitten sighed. Duan Shueching also nodded in agreement. "It's okay," Poplar Fruit comforted them. "Being able to see it once means that we have no regrets on this trip. Don't ask for too much." Indeed, such a scene should only exist in heaven. How many times could one see it in the human world? To be able to see such a beautiful scene up close and leave it deeply in one's memory was already the best gift from heaven. After seeing the crane dance, only a bare mountain wall and the dripping rock with flowing water could not attract Poplar Fruit and the others to stop and watch. They followed the original route and climbed towards Nine Dragon Spring. After climbing for a long time, the sun was already close to noon. The girls were all sweating profusely and were exhausted. "We're almost at Nine Dragon Spring. Let's take a break there," Song Jiwen suggested. Poplar Fruit was still very energetic, but seeing the girls' expressions, he nodded and agreed to Song Jiwen's suggestion. When they arrived at Nine Dragon Spring, Poplar Fruit and the others found a shady place. They took out a plastic carpet from Poplar Fruit's backpack and laid it under the shade of a tree. Then, everyone sat on it and ate the lunch they bought in the morning. Because they were too tired, the girls only ate a few mouthfuls of food before putting it down. As expected, Poplar Fruit smiled and took out a few clean big red apples and a can of fruit from his backpack. Kitten said in surprise, "Wow! Is your backpack Tinkerbell's pocket? Is there anything good in it? Hurry up and take it out." Everyone laughed heartily. Poplar Fruit was not in a hurry to eat. Instead, he took out a thermos and a milk bottle from his backpack. He used hot water to make a bottle of milk for Kiki to drink. After playing with Kiki for the whole morning, she was also tired. After drinking the milk, she fell asleep. After eating, everyone took the opportunity to rest. The energetic Poplar Fruit had nothing to do. He held Song Jiwen's DSLR and walked around. As he walked, he arrived at Yongcheng's Steel Forest. Yongcheng's Steel Forest had a collection of famous people and literati praising Lingnan, Yongcheng, and Baiyun Mountain. The black marble stele was quietly erected on the side of the mountain road. It was hidden in the dense green leaves. Poplar Fruit carefully looked at the words on it. Each stele's handwriting was different. However, the handwriting was either vigorous or elegant. Even Poplar Fruit, who did not understand calligraphy, felt that it was very beautiful. Perhaps, it was time to practice calligraphy in the future. Poplar Fruit thought to himself. He typed on the computer every day, but his own handwriting was a bit ugly. Now that he looked at the famous works, Poplar Fruit was extremely envious. When Poplar Fruit leisurely walked back, the group was ready to set off again. There was a saying in Yongcheng, "If you don't reach Baiyun Mountain, you can't be considered to have come to Yongcheng. If you don't go to Moxing Ridge, you can't be considered to have climbed Baiyun Mountain." Under Song Jiwen's provocation, the girls gritted their teeth and began to climb again. This time, Poplar Fruit did not let Duan Shueching continue to carry her backpack. He held Duan Shueching's backpack in his hand. This bit of weight was nothing to Poplar Fruit. It would be easier for her to climb the mountain if she carried light. Duan Shueching accompanied Poplar Fruit as they climbed step by step. Although they did not lean on each other like a couple, Duan Shueching felt sweet in her heart. Xiao Mao's backpack was also given to Song Jiwen. However, halfway up, Song Jiwen could not carry it anymore. In the end, it was given to Poplar Fruit. Even so, after climbing the mountain, everyone was almost paralyzed from exhaustion. However, Poplar Fruit, who was carrying bags of various sizes, was still full of energy. Duan Xueqing leaned against the stone railing, panting. Her bangs on her forehead were wet with sweat and stuck messily to her head. Suddenly, she saw a large hand in front of her, holding a bottle of mineral water. She looked up and saw Poplar Fruit looking at her with a smile. He said, "Drink some water. You look exhausted." "Okay." Duan Xueqing lowered her head slightly and took the water. Her cheeks suddenly turned bright red. She did not know if it was because she was tired from climbing the mountain or something else, but she looked very beautiful. However, Poplar Fruit did not notice. He had already turned around and handed the water to Song Jiwen and Xiao Mao. In the afternoon, they climbed the mountain for more than an hour. Then, everyone rested at the top of the mountain, took photos, and played for almost an hour. When they went down the mountain, they walked to the place where the cable car was. Everyone did not want to go down anymore, so they bought tickets and took the cable car down the mountain. Looking down at the pedestrians along the way from high up in the sky, Poplar Fruit suddenly realized that he had seen so many beautiful scenery today. The experience of traveling was really wonderful. It was better to travel 10,000 miles than to read 10,000 books. This was probably the feeling of traveling 10,000 miles. Poplar Fruit thought of his dream of becoming a gourmet traveler. If he traveled around the world, he might see more wonderful things. Chapter 67. Poplar Fruit had to wait for the translation manuscript from the Ingyen web. He postponed his original plan of returning to his hometown in August. Yang Guo thought to herself. But she did not expect the test translation to not be sent over yet. The reason is that the US translation was delayed, and they had just sent it out. In that case, they could only continue to wait. While waiting, Poplar Fruit finally finished learning Spanish. After learning Spanish, Poplar Fruit felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Spanish was the second most common language in the world, second only to Chinese. English, which was the most commonly learned language in China, was only ranked third. After learning Spanish, Poplar Fruit had mastered the top 3 languages in the world. Spanish was not easy to learn, especially its pronunciation. It was also the first time that Poplar Fruit came into contact with a large tongue sound. He had never encountered it in his previous studies of English, French, and German. Because it was his first time learning, there was no one to guide him. Poplar Fruit could only look for tutorials on the internet to study. In the beginning, Poplar Fruit curled his tongue and practiced exhalation all day long. After persisting for more than 10 days, he finally mastered the great tongue sound. It was also because he practiced too hard that Poplar Fruit's tongue was curled up when he spoke. Song Jiwen even laughed at him, saying that he met a fierce girl and got his tongue bitten while kissing. However, after learning the big tongue sound, Poplar Fruit realized that his tongue was much better. Moreover, the big tongue sound had many other benefits. Especially when she was teasing Chi-Chi, Yanghua would roll her tongue and make a series of lay sounds. Chi-Chi would be so shocked that her little mouth would turn into an O shape, and then she would laugh happily. Other things that needed to be memorized, such as the Latin alphabet, the use of punctuation marks different from English and Chinese, such as inverted question marks and inverted exclamation marks, grammar, vocabulary, and so on, were not difficult for Poplar Fruit. All he needed to do was spend some time and it was not a problem. After learning Spanish, Poplar Fruit realized that those who could speak N languages were definitely not ordinary people. Let's not talk about those Spanish, English, German, and French words that look a bit similar. In terms of word structure, Spanish, French, and German are all divided into feminine and masculine, but the masculine and feminine of each language are different. Spanish was very strange. For example, men's shirts were feminine. But who would have thought that men's shirts were feminine? Do men wear women's clothes? If Poplar Fruit had not been able to master all of them through rote memorization, and if he wanted to determine the masculine and the feminine like other people, wouldn't he have been driven crazy by all kinds of strange rules after learning 2 or 3 languages? When Poplar Fruit was looking for foreigners to practice Spanish on the internet, he also found that there were differences in the accents of Spanish spoken in different places. This might be the same as the various dialects of Chinese. Poplar Fruit practiced Castilian, which was the language that people usually referred to. Some people said that Spanish was a language to talk to God. Poplar Fruit did not think much of it. In terms of beauty, Poplar Fruit felt that Chinese and French were not inferior to Spanish. However, Spanish songs were still very pleasant to listen to. For example, the theme song of last year's World Cup, Waka Waka, was written and sung by Shakira. Every time Poplar Fruit listened to it, he felt his blood boil. The advantage of learning Spanish was that Spanish and Portuguese were very similar in writing, but there were certain differences in pronunciation. However, compared to learning a new language from scratch, this was much better. Just how similar were they? In fact, the difference between the words may be only 1 or 2 letters, and there was not much difference in grammar. Generally, Spanish speakers could easily read Portuguese books, and vice versa. However, the pronunciation needed to be relearned. Here was an analogy. The difference between Spanish and Portuguese was like the difference between Mandarin and Cantonese. The grammatical structure was not much different, but the pronunciation of words was different. It was difficult to guess correctly. It took a lot of effort to understand. Learning had to be done step by step, and it was important to strike a balance between work and rest. Recently, Song Jiwen's work was not so busy, so as long as he was free at night, Song Jiwen would take Poplar Fruit to the gym to exercise. The reason why they did not play basketball was mainly because Kiki needed someone to take care of her. If Kitten did not come to help take care of her, Poplar Fruit would not feel at ease leaving her alone to play. However, Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen's favorite was still playing basketball. Therefore, on another weekend, Kitten came as promised. Poplar Fruit quickly pulled Song Jiwen, changed into the jersey and shoes, and walked to the basketball court. Sitting on the sidelines and waiting for the change, Uncle Jean, Su Kai, saw Poplar Fruit and the others from afar. He patted his butt, stood up, and greeted them with a smile. He smiled and said, "Xiaoyang, after waiting for half a month, I can finally wait for you again." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Uncle Jean, are you so eager to see me? Wouldn't it be easier for you to play without us?" Uncle Jean smiled and said, "Ah, the feeling of being defeated by Dugu is not good. With you guys here, we can play with more passion." Since there were new people, Uncle Jean asked everyone to form a new team. After warming up, Poplar Fruit, Song Jiwen, and an uncle who looked to be in his 40s formed a team. Because the ball did not pass, Uncle Jean, Uncle Dao, and Uncle Ban sat off the court and waited. This time, Poplar Fruit changed his style of breaking through and passing the ball to his teammates. He let Song Jiwen be the point guard, and he moved in and out of position. As long as the opponent was not paying attention, he could run out of space. Although Song Jiwen, as a point guard, did not have a wide passing field and did not control the strength of the pass very well, he just stared at Poplar Fruit, grasped the timing very well, and passed 2 good balls in a row. Poplar Fruit also shot after receiving the ball. Whether there was anyone in front of him or not, his shot was like his sniper rifle. As long as he threw it out, it could steadily go into the basket. "This guy. He has become stronger again," Uncle Jean thought to himself. In the past, Poplar Fruit had not shown such accurate shooting. Now that he showed his shooting ability, it was even harder to defend. After 2 consecutive shots were scored by Poplar Fruit, the group of uncles on the opposite side decided to send someone to follow Poplar Fruit at all costs. Wherever Poplar Fruit went, he would be there. He was like a gangrene attached to the bone, and there was no way to get rid of him. But how could Poplar Fruit be so easy to stop? He first passed the ball back to Song Jiwen, then ran to the other side. Although he still could not get rid of him, when Poplar Fruit received the ball again, he did not choose to shoot immediately. Instead, he tapped lightly, and the uncle who was guarding him jumped up. Poplar Fruit then easily bypassed him, accelerated, and got a layup. 3-0, the first group of uncles was easily defeated by Poplar Fruit and the others. "We still have to play." Uncle Gene stood up, twisted his waist, and laughed. During the time when Poplar Fruit was not here, Uncle Gene and the others were not idle. In private, they also thought about how to restrain Poplar Fruit. To deal with a super player like Poplar Fruit who could break, shoot, and shoot, they had to learn from the American NBA. If the other teams could not stop him with one player, they would send two players to deal with him. The two players would attack him from both sides, forcing him to shoot or pass hastily. The biggest problem with two players attacking him from both sides was that one of the opponents would definitely run out of space. Then, they could only bet that the person who received the ball would not make the shot. After all, they would rather let the role player make 2 more shots than let Kobe go crazy. So, Uncle Gene and the others used this method to deal with Poplar Fruit. Uncle Dao missed a long shot, and Poplar Fruit grabbed the defensive rebound and passed it to Song Jiwen to dribble the ball out of the 3-point line. At this time, Poplar Fruit found that Uncle Dao and Uncle Ban had one person close to him to defend, and the other person was nearby ready to attack from both sides. This was to prevent him from receiving the ball. Poplar Fruit's eyelids twitched. He waved his hand to let Song Jiwen, who had no one to defend, attack. However, Song Jiwen's long shot was not accurate. He tried to break in, but Uncle Gene occupied the area under the basket. He could not squeeze past Uncle Gene for a layup. So, he had no choice but to retreat and try a long shot. However, the long shot did not go in, and the rebound was snatched by Uncle Gene, who had a big waist. The uncle in Poplar Fruit's team was really not good. He did not know how to position himself, and only knew how to drill under the basket. Although he was also very strong, his lower limbs were weak. Uncle Gene gently pushed him, and he could not stand still. After getting the ball, Uncle Gene took advantage of the weakness of the uncle in Poplar Fruit's team. Uncle Gene forced Poplar Fruit to help defend, and then the ball was passed to Uncle Dao. Uncle Dao accurately shot a long shot, and Poplar Fruit's team lost the ball first. This was not going to work. Poplar Fruit knew that his team's defense was definitely not good enough. He could only fight with brute force. "Uncle Gua, let me do it. You guard against him." In the next offense, Poplar Fruit let Uncle Gua guard out, and Poplar Fruit guarded the area under the basket and followed Uncle Dao to grab the rebound. Uncle Gua did not guard against Uncle Dao, and Uncle Dao passed by him with a shake. However, Poplar Fruit did not have high hopes for Uncle Gua. He had expected this situation. As long as Uncle Dao did not comfortably shoot a long shot, it would be a success. Sure enough, after Uncle Dao scored another shot, he finally missed the shot, and the rebound was taken by the younger Poplar Fruit. Although the score was 2-0, and Poplar Fruit's team was in danger, Poplar Fruit was not afraid at all. He passed the ball to Song Jiwen and said, "Mosquito, shoot boldly, don't be afraid." He cruised around the 3-second zone, and Uncle Dao and Uncle Ban followed him like a shadow. Song Jiwen listened to Poplar Fruit's command, took 2 steps inside the 3-point line, and began to take deep breaths. No one guarded against him, and he calmly shot the ball. "No!" Uncle Gene roared, and the basketball bounced high on the basket. He squeezed Uncle Gua and jumped up, and the ball was about to be caught. Suddenly, a big yellow hand appeared in front of him. Uncle Gene turned his head in horror and saw Poplar Fruit jump to his right. They had seen Poplar Fruit's terrifying jumping ability, and this time, although Poplar Fruit jumped a little later, he jumped higher. When Uncle Gene stopped rising, Poplar Fruit was already 2 heads higher than him, and he was still rising slowly. Uncle Gene looked at Poplar Fruit hopelessly in the air. His right hand reached above the basketball, and then he heavily dunked the ball into the basket. Single-handed midair dunk. Was this a neighborhood court or an NBA court? How could they see such a big dunk here? Everyone on and off the court was stunned. Uncle Gene looked at Poplar Fruit, who let go of the basket and jumped down, and thought gloomily, "How can I play like this?" Without 2 people guarding him, he could easily break through or shoot. With 2 people attacking him, his teammates couldn't shoot, but he could still fill in. There was no way he could guard. The result was obvious. With Poplar Fruit's rebound guarantee, Song Jiwen's confidence increased greatly, and he even hit one of his next 2 shots. In the end, Poplar Fruit's team counterattacked Uncle Jin's team with a score of 3-2. No matter how much he thought about it, he still couldn't see through Poplar Fruit. Chapter 68. Schwa. The basketball made a circle of white waves in the basket, which also announced that Poplar Fruit's team had defeated Uncle Jin's team once again. It was the 3rd time. Uncle Jin put his hands on his waist and looked at Poplar Fruit helplessly. In the 2nd round, Poplar Fruit still won by making a layup. In the 3rd round, Poplar Fruit changed his style of play and no longer relied on his incredible jump to influence the game. Just when Uncle Jin and the others saw the dawn of victory, Poplar Fruit unexpectedly used 2 almost impossible jump shots to extinguish their hope again. The first jump shot was from outside the 3-point line. Although Poplar Fruit suddenly jumped, Uncle Jin, who was following him closely, was not careless and jumped close to him. Poplar Fruit jumped very high, but Uncle Jin still tried to cover Poplar Fruit's eyes with his hand to obstruct Poplar Fruit's view of the shot. However, Poplar Fruit still made the shot. Even if his view was blocked, even if there was someone in front of him, even if it was from outside the 3-point line, Poplar Fruit still made the shot unreasonably. It was as unstoppable as the sharpshooters in the NBA. What else could Uncle Jin and the others say? The second jump shot was from inside the 3-point line. In this round, Uncle Jin and the others could be said to have forced Poplar Fruit into a corner. The 3 of them went up together and surrounded Poplar Fruit from the front, back, left, and right. They did not give Poplar Fruit any space to pass the ball. Even if his body was strong, it was impossible to break through the encirclement of 3 people, right? Uncle Jin was full of joy, thinking that he had finally defended once. However, Poplar Fruit made another jump shot. This time, Uncle Jin and Poplar Fruit jumped at the same time. Although the other 2 uncles reacted a little slower, they still jumped after them. I must be able to defend. Uncle Jin saw that his big hand blocked Young was passing route. He felt that this time, it was a sure thing. However, he found that when he began to fall, Poplar Fruit was still rising. Don't worry, we still have teammates. Uncle Jin comforted himself because he saw the 2 uncles who had caught up from behind once again put their big hands in front of Poplar Fruit. However, when he landed on the ground and Uncle Dao and Uncle Ban stopped their ascent, Poplar Fruit was still floating in the air. What kind of bounce was that? What kind of suspension was that? After the 2 uncles fell, they could no longer block Poplar Fruit's shot. They saw Poplar Fruit straighten his waist in the air, and with the help of the new force, his right wrist shook slightly. The basketball flew out, drawing a high parabola in the air, and then plunged into the basket. This was also the scene at the beginning of the game. Poplar Fruit once again made an unreasonable long shot, and finished off Uncle Jin's team 3 times in a row. To be honest, in terms of individual strength, except for Poplar Fruit, the other 2 players in Poplar Fruit's team were not comparable to the 3 uncles. However, Poplar Fruit alone could take on 2 or even 3 opponents. This was the power of a star player. One person could hold up the sky. Even if his teammates were bad, such as Uncle Gua's skills and body, Poplar Fruit could lead them to victory. However, Poplar Fruit did not like this, because he was not Kobe Bryant. He did not like to have all the ball in his hands. Like last time, Poplar Fruit's team had Ah Feng, and Ah Feng's strength was not bad. Poplar Fruit was relieved to be the point guard. He relied on his own breakthrough to gain space for his teammates, and then pass the ball to let his teammates score. Compared to one-on-one, Poplar Fruit preferred team basketball, because everyone could feel the joy of basketball. Speak of the devil. When Poplar Fruit was still thinking of Ah Feng, he suddenly heard Ah Feng's surprised cry. Brother Yang, you are here too? Great. Poplar Fruit turned his head and looked. Ah Feng followed a very tall boy from the entrance of the court. The boy was much taller than Poplar Fruit. He was at least 1.95 meters tall. He was not thin, and the muscles on his arms were very thick. He looked like a fierce general. Why are you so late? Poplar Fruit laughed. My cousin came today, so I played a little late. Ah Feng explained, this is my cousin, An Ziming. He is on the school team of Guangdong Polytechnic University. So strong? Poplar Fruit knew that Guangdong Polytechnic University's basketball team was a strong team that participated in the Cubs. The Cubs was different from the Cuba. This competition was called the Great Super League, and professional athletes were allowed to participate. As long as they could provide a study-in-school certificate, professional players registered in the China Basketball Association could also participate. Guangdong Polytechnic University's basketball team used to have Emperor Yi, Zhu Fengyu, and other badass players. They also won many Cubs championships, so their strength could be seen. Hello, and Ziming was very friendly and reached out his hand to shake Poplar Fruit's hand. He said, I heard from Xiao Feng that you play very well. Today, I also came because of your reputation. No, how good can it be? Ah Feng exaggerated. We are all amateurs, and we secretly exercise our bodies. Poplar Fruit said modestly. Haha, you came at the right time today. Uncle Jean patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and laughed. This kid, he didn't come once in half a month. We rarely see him, but as soon as we see him, we are beaten by him. Haha. When it came to basketball, An Ziming's tone became more serious. He said, actually, when we were at the entrance, we saw that Brother Yang was really good at basketball. His jumping ability was better than many of the people on our school team. I really want to play against you. Then let's learn from each other. Uncle Jean said happily, you come to our team, Xiao Feng go to Poplar Fruit's team. Finally, there was an expert that seemed to be able to restrain Poplar Fruit. Uncle Jean secretly thought with tears streaming down his face, God, you finally gave us a chance to defeat the great landlord Yang? With a match between experts, the other team's uncles were also very happy. They sat down and continued to be spectators. If they went up, they would be beaten, but if they watched from the sidelines, they could rest for a while. After they were divided into groups, they changed the rules this time. It was 4 against 4, and they played 5 balls. The first to kick off was Poplar Fruit's team. Uncle Gua knew that he was not good enough, so he ran outside the center circle to serve. Poplar Fruit received the ball and signaled for everyone to spread out. He wanted to play 1v1 An Ziming. Although he was very humble just now, Poplar Fruit was still a young man in his late 20s. After all, there was still a competitive spirit in his bones. It was rare to meet a professional opponent, so Poplar Fruit wanted to measure his opponent's strength. The two of them faced each other between the three-point line and the free-throw line, and Poplar Fruit started to dribble the ball in a very flashy way. Poplar Fruit had never trained professionally. He learned his moves from TV. Although he could dribble the ball from his crotch and behind his back, he could not string these moves together to break through the opponent's routine. An Ziming was very experienced in dealing with Poplar Fruit. After all, he was someone who had played in big games. He steadily bent his knees and stared at Poplar Fruit's shoulder, and did not rush forward to snatch the ball. In fact, An Ziming also had his difficulties. How could he not want to snatch the ball? However, Poplar Fruit's dribbling speed was too fast. If he tried to snatch the ball, he did not have full confidence that he could snatch it. Who knows? Maybe Poplar Fruit would take the opportunity to break through. An Ziming dealt with all changes by remaining unchanged, not leaving any openings. This gave Poplar Fruit a headache. He simply tried to break through from An Ziming's left side, and An Ziming immediately blocked him. It's not that easy, Poplar Fruit shouted in his heart. He skillfully dribbled the ball from behind, passed the ball to his left hand, and then changed his body's center of gravity to the left. Poplar Fruit's speed was really fast. An Ziming almost let him change direction and break through. However, An Ziming was really experienced. He stuck close to Poplar Fruit, used his advantage of height and long arms, and firmly blocked Poplar Fruit's path to the basket. Poplar Fruit forced a shot, but the ball did not go in. Uncle Jean even ran over to pick up the rebound. This time, it was An Ziming's turn to solo Poplar Fruit. An Ziming thought that since he was nearly 10 centimeters taller than Poplar Fruit, he could rely on his body to take on poplar fruit. Therefore, he turned sideways, and wanted to use his shoulder to break through poplar fruit. However, how could poplar fruit let him have his way? He steadily got into a horse stance, and blocked Enzyming's attacks again and again. He did not know that this gave Enzyming a great shock. He was pushing against poplar fruit, and it was like he was pushing against a towering tree. The tree did not move, but he was exhausted. How strong was poplar fruit! However, he was not so stubborn that he had to go all the way. He suddenly twisted his shoulder, and brushed past poplar fruit. I broke through, Enzyming thought. He made a standard layup, and his right hand was almost at the edge of the backboard. Careful! Uncle Jean and the others' cries of surprise could be heard. Enzyming was shocked to see Yang Guo leap up from behind him like an eagle spreading its wings. Then, with a slap of his hand, he smacked the basketball that he had just released onto the backboard. What a big hat! So strong! Enzyming watched poplar fruit jump again and get the backboard. His eyes were burning with the desire to fight. It was only interesting to have such an opponent. Enzyming's desire to fight had been completely stimulated by poplar fruit. Both of them could not do anything to each other for the time being. Poplar fruit was the first to change his strategy. He no longer played alone. Poplar fruit asked Ah Feng and Song Jiwen to run. As for Uncle Guo, he was already tired enough, so there was no need for him to run. It was good enough that he could pass the ball. Poplar fruit passed the ball to Song Jiwen, who ran out of space, and cut inside himself. Song Jiwen did not have time to shoot, and Uncle Ban had already rushed up, so he immediately passed the ball to Ah Feng. Ah Feng threw a high pass to poplar fruit, who ran inside. Enzyming quickly ran over and followed Uncle Ban with poplar fruit. Poplar fruit forced himself to jump and make a shooting motion. Come down! Enzyming jumped up high, and his right hand slammed toward the ball. Uncle Ban also tried his best to block poplar fruit's front right side. But poplar fruit did not really shoot. He just gently threw the ball behind his head. He was pretending to be a pro, and he passed the ball without looking. Just when poplar fruit received the ball, he caught a glimpse of Song Jiwen getting rid of the defense and running to his back. So he had an idea in his mind. Poplar fruit jumped up, attracted everyone's attention, and then unexpectedly passed the ball to Song Jiwen. At this time, it was too late for Uncle Ban to follow and defend. Song Jiwen easily made a layup in the open space and scored the first point. Good shot! Poplar fruit and Song Jiwen high-fived and said, "Good pass." Song Jiwen also said very happily. Enzyming looked at them with a smile, but in his heart, he was happy to see the game. This was interesting. The strength of the two teams was relatively equal. Although Uncle Guo was a bit of a hindrance, poplar fruit made up for this shortcoming very well. So the two teams did not give way to each other at both ends of the offense and defense. If you score one, I will definitely pass the next round and return one to you. Winning or losing this game was no longer important. Such a wonderful game made the audience off the court exclaim. Poplar fruit and Enzyming, the two strongest players, were also evenly matched. It was difficult to tell who would win. Chapter 69. It's finally here. Poplar fruit put down the phone and waved his fist happily. Poplar fruit had been waiting for 2 weeks ever since the staff of Ingyen Web informed him of the results of the second round of assessment. Finally, the manuscript for the third round of test translation was sent over. Kiki was sleeping. She only went out for a while, so Poplar fruit was not worried. He grabbed his keys and ran out in a hurry, dragging a pair of slippers with him. When he arrived at the entrance of the residential area where the sun was shining, he finally received a copy of the manuscript from the courier. When he got home, Poplar fruit used a small knife to cut open the package that was still steaming hot. He took out a thin stack of paper and flipped through it. The manuscript was only 5 pages. They were all photocopied in English and had a red confidentiality seal on them. Poplar fruit rubbed the 5 pages and sighed, "It's not easy to get your hands on this. It would be great if it was an electronic version." He could just send it to the mailbox and receive it immediately. However, he could not blame Dongxin Publishing and Ingyan Web. After all, they had the photocopied version that was sent over the sea. It could only be said that the Americans had a strong sense of confidentiality. As long as they could guarantee that the manuscript would not be leaked before the official publication, they did not care about anything complicated. Poplar Fruit could not wait. He did not even eat lunch and started reading the English manuscript in his hands. It had to be said that Poplar Fruit's English was now close to the peak. An American whose mother tongue was English might not be able to compare to Poplar Fruit. After a few months of translation, Poplar Fruit was now able to read English materials as easily as reading his mother tongue materials. If he could read technical documents that were full of obscure industry terms, what more a biography? In the previous preparation work, Poplar Fruit had specially looked for terms from the computer industry and other related high-tech industries for deep learning. But now, it seemed that it was unnecessary. The terms that he learned were too profound. Not to mention how much Isaacson, as a biographer, could understand. Even if he did, he would not use them too much in his book. After all, how many readers would be willing to read a biography full of unfamiliar words? Of course, this didn't mean that Poplar Fruit's preparations were completely useless. In order to seize this opportunity, he did his best to search for reports and information on sect leader Qiao and the more famous executives in his company. This time, it came in handy. Because the test version was about Jonathan? Jonathan Ive, the head of Apple's design team, also designed Poplar Fruit's favorite iPad. While searching for information, Poplar Fruit learned about Jonathan Watson. Poplar Fruit didn't realize how important AI Fu was to Apple and Steve Jobs until he read the draft. Sect leader Qiao said, "The difference is that Jonathan has made, is not only at Apple but in the world, is huge." The meaning of this sentence was, the changes brought by Jonathan, Steve Jobs affectionately called him Johnny, not only in Apple, but also in the world, have a huge impact. Sect leader Qiao even said, "If I had a spiritual partner at Apple, it's Johnny." This sentence was a bit ambiguous. It was, if I had a spiritual partner at Apple, it would be Johnny. However, the translation of the word, spiritual partner, was still debatable. If the words spiritual partner or soulmate were used to describe two men, it would sound like they were in love. Of course, if it was a spiritual partner, or spiritual partner, the translation effect would be much weaker. It would not reflect Steve Jobs' deep love and dependence for Jonathan. This was also the charm of literary translation. They were not like technical documents, where a source language word corresponded to only one translated word. As long as the corresponding meaning could be translated, it would be fine. Literary translation required the translator to carefully figure out the author's writing intent. What kind of message does he want the reader to receive? What does he want to convey by using this word? What is his hidden intention in choosing this way of expression? These translators had to understand thoroughly before they started translating. Secondly, when you choose which words and sentences to use to translate this paragraph, you need to carefully consider whether the information that the author wants to express can be reflected in your translation. Is their translation in line with the reading habits of the target language reader? Did his translation work perfectly with the context? There were many things that needed to be considered. These were the things that fascinated people who were willing to engage in literary translation, but also the limitations of literary translation. It was important to note that literary translation remuneration had never been very high in the industry. After many years of development, the price of literary translation had not increased much compared to more than 10 years ago. Of course, this was not absolute. The translation price of some best-selling books was not low, but even if it was high, it would not be much more than technical documents. Translators of the same level would have to put in 3 times more effort than technical documents when translating literary works. Sometimes, the money in exchange would not even be as much as technical documents, or it could be said that the effort and return were not proportional at all. How could young translators, who had the heavy responsibility of supporting their families, be motivated to enter this circle? As long as possible, who would be willing to give up technical document translation work, which could easily make several times more money, and turn to the painstaking and thankless literary translation work? At present, literary translation was mostly done by the older generation of translators, and there were also many university professors doing part-time jobs. The emerging strength of the younger generation was almost non-existent, and there was a mix of good and bad. Some of the translated translations were all in vernacular, or even British Chinese, which was very difficult to read. Some people even published papers saying that this was a manifestation of cultural integration. However, was it really good to put something that people could not understand on the market? Back to Yongguo's side of the story. Poplar Fruit was fascinated by this manuscript. Isaacson was indeed a master of biography. He was extremely good at using concise words to express a lot of information. This was just like Apple's design philosophy of simplicity. It looked simple, but it was not ordinary. Isaacson described the simplicity of Apple's product design as follows: simple underscore isn't underscore just underscore visual underscore style. It's underscore not underscore just underscore minimalism underscore absence underscore clutter. Underscore involves truth underscore complexity. The literal translation of the meaning was, simplicity is not just a visual effect, nor is it just cutting or erasing the messy things. It is related to the depth of complexity. Poplar Fruit had a deep feeling about this, especially his favorite iPhone 4, which was Sir Chow's masterpiece. The front and back panels of the iPhone 4 used a special tempered glass design. This was unprecedented. Not only did it improve the touch and sense of security, but it also improved the look of the iPhone by more than a level. It completely left the other plastic phones on the market dozens of streets behind. This design looked very simple. Wasn't it just sticking two pieces of glass on top? However, its technical complexity was probably only understood by Apple's design team. Of course, nothing was perfect. Even for the iPhone 4, there were conflicts in design and engineering. When Jonathan designed the iPhone 4, he hoped to use a new steel ring design. This steel ring was the support structure of the body, and it could also play the role of the finishing touch on the overall design. It looked very sleek and felt very textured. And part of the steel ring could also be used as the phone's antenna. The steel ring played a crucial role in making the iPhone 4 so thin. However, this also brought a big problem. The steel ring would weaken the phone's signal. The engineer had suggested that Jonathan spray a coating on the outside of the steel ring, but Jonathan thought that it would affect the appearance of his brushed metal. Later, he chose a design with a small gap in the steel ring. This design also caused the antenna door incident. If the phone was held with the left hand, the palm would cover the small gap, so there was a 1% chance of signal loss. The problem wasn't small, but it couldn't hide the beauty of Apple's design. It also couldn't hide Jonathan's pursuit of perfection in design. Moreover, Apple's later series of public relations measures also solved the crisis very well. Looking at the history between sect leader Chow and Jonathan, these two good friends, Poplar Fruit sighed. A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Sect Master Chow was able to understand Jonathan's lofty ambitions and faith in design. He was able to show unparalleled importance to design. This was probably the reason why Jonathan had always been loyal to Sect Master Chow. And Jonathan was able to understand sect leader Chow's needs, and they had the same understanding of the concept of beauty. This was also the reason why sect leader Chow trusted and valued Jonathan from the beginning to the end. In the vast sea of people, it was really not easy to meet someone who understood you so well and supported you so well. Sect leader Chow, I'm afraid you've also wondered why Jonathan was a bearded man and not a graceful woman, right? Meeting each other, snuggling up to each other, but not being able to love each other might be one of your life's biggest regrets, right? Poplar Fruit had a smirk on his face as he thought. Too rotten. Poplar Fruit, you're about to go crazy from being a homebody. How can you harbor such deep malice towards your idol? Unable to let his thoughts run wild, Poplar Fruit shook his head and focused on reading. However, there were only 5 pages. Before long, Poplar Fruit had already flipped to the last page. Why is there no more? Why is there so little? What happened at the end? Poplar Fruit slammed the table and shouted, I still want to read. He had just seen that Steve Jobs had returned to Apple and pulled back Jonathan, who had resigned and was about to leave. When Apple's designer-led engineer once again, there was nothing at the end. Why was it so fraudulent? Would it kill him to read a little more? Poplar Fruit felt like his heart was being scratched by a cat. Just as he was getting excited, the result came to an abrupt end. This feeling was like throwing a punch with all his might only to hit empty air. It was very depressing. No, I can't wait a few months before I can continue reading. Poplar Fruit stood up and paced back and forth in the living room with his head in his hands. Only by passing this test would he have the opportunity to read the rest of the text earlier. Poplar Fruit had not eaten lunch yet, so he hastily cooked some noodles for himself and finished them quickly. After simply satisfying his appetite, Poplar Fruit sat in front of the computer and enthusiastically began the third and final round of the translation test. He clenched his fists and his eyes shone with confidence as he thought to himself, "This time, I will do my best to recruit translators. I, Poplar Fruit, will definitely be the translator of sect leader Qiao's biography." Chapter 70. Bang Bang. In the basketball stadium of Guangdong University of Technology, two tall boys were having a one-on-one bullfight. Two boys were sitting on the floor on the side of the court, sweating profusely. F***CK. Dong Xiaofang, you cheated. The boy with the crew cut was caught off guard by the boy named Dong Xiaofang. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dong Xiaofang turned around to get rid of him, then bent down to catch the basketball. He jumped up, and the basketball bounced gently on the white line of the backboard and fell into the basket. After landing, he picked up the basketball, bounced it in his hand, and said with a smile, "All is fair in war. If you lose, you lose. Qiu Xin, don't deny it." "Humph, I'll kill you in the next game." Qiu Xin smashed his right fist on his left palm, turned his head and sat with the other two. "It's my turn." The boy sitting on the far left patted his butt and stood up. In fact, there was no dust on the smooth wooden court. He just flattened his sweat-soaked pants. He was a little shorter than Dong Xiaofang and Qiu Xin, but he was still more than 1.8 meters tall. His body was very strong, and the two strong chest muscles on his chest were about to burst his jersey. When Dong Xiaofang saw him, his face drooped. He wailed, "Master Ji, don't bully me. My small arms and legs can't carry you." Dong Xiaofang raised his thigh, which was not as thick as the boy named Zhang Jie's arm. Zhang Jie smiled and said, "It's okay. I won't eat you by force." After the kickoff, Zhang Jie received the basketball thrown by Dong Xiaofang from outside the three-point line, and then began to dribble the ball slowly. Looking at Zhang Jie's slow movements, Dong Xiaofang felt a lot of pressure. Every time Zhang Jie's arm swung, the muscles of his whole body undulated, like a small mountain rolling. It looked very scary. Every time Zhang Jie took a step forward, Dong Xiaofang couldn't help but take a step back. "Dong Xiaofang, what are you playing?" The mature-looking boy sitting with Qiu Xin scolded. "Why are you afraid of him? Go and grab the ball. If you retreat without a fight, why do you still want to play basketball?" His tone was similar to that of his parents, who had expected better from him. After being scolded, Dong Xiaofang lowered his head and replied, "Yes, Captain." He was a freshman who had only been in school for a year. He still had deep respect for the captain of the school team who had served for 3 years. As a traditional strong basketball school in the south, Guangdong Provincial University of Technology often had professional players in the team. It was not easy for Deng Jian, an ordinary student, to stand out from several professional players and become the captain of the school team. Of course, Deng Jian's skills were still very strong. Every year, many NBL and even CBA teams threw him an olive branch. However, Deng Jian did not get what he wanted because of the layers of resistance from his family. Dong Xiaofang was the one with the most potential among the freshmen in the school team. Deng Jian had taken a fancy to him during the freshman selection last year. However, Dong Xiaofang relied too much on his talent. He wasn't willing to endure hardships and didn't practice his basic skills properly. Even when he was competing, he liked to play tricks. This was something that Deng Jian found hard to let go of. He had high expectations for him, but he was even more disappointed. Zhang Jie straightened up, patted the ball on the spot and said, "Xiao Fang, I said I won't eat you by force, so I won't eat you by force. Fight bravely." "Okay." Dong Xiaofang nodded and tried his best to stick to him. He raised one hand in the air and tried to grab Zhang Jie's basketball with the other. Hee. The corner of Zhang Jie's mouth twitched, and he suddenly made a move. Although he was tall and sturdy, his agility wasn't bad at all. He lightly arched his buttocks, and then with his left leg as an axis, he turned his body and bypassed Dong Xiaofang. However, Dong Xiaofang did not give up. He was much faster than Zhang Jie. He gritted his teeth, his chest pressed against Zhang Jie's big arm, and followed Zhang Jie closely. His long arm waved in front of Zhang Jie, interfering with his layup. However, Zhang Jie was an old team member who was almost in his senior year. He was experienced. He knew that Dong Xiaofang wanted to stick close to him and rush down. His shoulders suddenly lowered, and then he took a step back. Suddenly without support, Dong Xiaofang was suddenly brought forward by the strength of his body and staggered a few steps. At this time, Zhang Jie seized the opportunity and easily made a 45-degree shot that was almost under the basket. Although his arm strength was too big and he could not control the strength of his outside shot, Zhang Jie did not hesitate to make a shot in such a position where almost anyone could make a shot. If he did not make such a shot, it would really be a disgrace to the school team of Guangdong University of Technology. Although he did not guard against the shot, Deng Jian still applauded Dong Xiaofang's efforts. He shouted in a deep voice, "Good play. That's the way. You can only win if you dare to fight." He did not expect Dong Xiaofang to be able to guard against the impact of a player inside the three-point line as an outside player, but he must have such an attitude. As soon as his voice fell, the door of the basketball stadium was pushed open with a creak. The group of people turned their heads and saw An Ziming in a jersey walk in. Brother An, Ming Zai, Old An, and other greetings were endless. An Ziming responded to them one by one, and then he asked curiously, "Captain, why are there so few people today?" Deng Jian smiled and said, "Isn't the World University Games held in Shengta City recently? A few of them went to volunteer, and a few of them went to join in the fun. Dafu and Jiaxuan went back to their hometown 2 days ago for the summer vacation. It's not bad to have so many people. Didn't they volunteer for the Asian Games last year? Why did they go to the World University Games again? I don't think it's rare." And Ziming shook his head. They're lucky to be able to participate in such a world-class sports event when they're still students, and they're even able to volunteer. I think after this time, I don't know how many years later there will be another one. Just let them have fun. It's okay. Hee. I think only the freshmen like to join in the fun. Qiu Xin said, "We don't have the enthusiasm to stand guard in such a hot weather." "What freshmen like to join in the fun?" Dong Xiaofang said discontentedly, "I didn't go, okay?" Deng Jian hit the nail on the head and said, "You didn't go because you are lazy." The captain's words made everyone laugh. Dong Xiaofang muttered, "It's not interesting." As they chatted, their bullfight continued. Dong Xiaofang really couldn't compete with Zhang Jie in terms of strength, but he also had his advantages. Dong Xiaofang's speed was very fast. He could run 100 meters in under 12.5 seconds, and his body was also very flexible. Speed was difficult to show in half of the bullfight, but flexibility was different. Dong Xiaofang's left and right hands were bouncing the ball faster and faster, and the range was also getting bigger and bigger, to the point where his knees needed to swing back and forth every time he bounced the ball. His dribbling was not just a simple two-handed dribbling, nor was it limited to one posture. Instead, it was a high-speed transition between high, low, crotch, back, and other different movements. It was different from Poplar Fruit's simple dribbling. His every movement looked like he was going to break through, making people unable to understand his intentions. Although he had been teammates with Dong Xiaofang for so long, Zhang Jie still couldn't figure out which of Dong Xiaofang's movements were real and which were fake. His speed was too fast, and he didn't dare to rush forward, for fear of being broken through. Dong Xiaofang suddenly turned his act into reality. He moved his right leg and was about to sweep past Zhang Jie's left side. Zhang Jie hurriedly followed, but Dong Xiaofang dribbled the ball from behind. His right hand was empty, and then his left hand received the ball. His body swayed, and he was about to change direction. Not good. Zhang Jie quickly twisted his strong body and moved his right leg, wanting to follow. However, Dong Xiaofang's movement was also fake. He was waiting for Zhang Jie to spread his legs apart and couldn't jump for a while. Then, he took a step back, jumped up forcefully with his waist, and shot a pull-up shot. Dong Xiaofang's shot was very accurate. In a situation where Zhang Jie couldn't interfere with him, the basketball was like an infrared-guided missile, accurately falling into the basket. This was Dong Xiaofang's super talent. He was a bit like my D, with good physical fitness, accurate mid-range shots, sharp breakthroughs, and pull-up jump shot. However, he also inherited my D's fatal shortcomings: over-reliance on talent, weak defensive willpower, and not enough fighting spirit. If he could be down-to-earth and train seriously, in the future, he might be able to become a general in Guangdong University of Technology, or even a professional club. Therefore, while Deng Jian was disgusted with Dong Xiaofang's laziness, he still forced Dong Xiaofang to strengthen his training like a goat, honing his fighting spirit that was willing to endure hardships. After a few rounds of training, Ziming wiped the sweat off his face and said to Deng Jian, "Captain, this won't work. If we don't compete, everyone won't be enthusiastic, and it won't be effective." Deng Jian nodded in agreement and said, "I know, but how can we compete at this time? There are only 5 of us, and we can't even form 2 teams. If we want to compete with other teams, and it's the holidays, who would still be in school? Why don't we find a professional team to practice with? Or we can be their sparring partners." And Ziming said with his eyes shining. "You wish," Deng Jian said with a smile. "With just a few of us, do you think we're qualified to be the professional team sparring partners?" That was true. Other than Deng Jian, who was a stable starter for the school team, the others were only substitutes, or even the substitutes of substitutes. Without the support of those few professional players, the strength of the student players was still too far behind the strength of the club. "Oh, that's true." And Ziming shook his head. Deng Jian said, "At this time, it's not easy to find opponents of similar strength. Let's train like this and hold our spirits. When school starts, I'll contact opponents for everyone. There's not much difference in strength." And Ziming's eyes suddenly lit up and said, "I know a few people who play well." He told them about his experience playing in Jinli district last time. "You mean there's a Higashiyama University graduate who's better than you? What's his name?" Deng Jian was stunned. He didn't remember such a person. And Ziming's strength ranking in the school team was also very high. He was usually called the best 6th player. Poplar Fruit. "Captain, you probably haven't heard of him. He didn't participate in the school team before," and Ziming said. "It's not just Poplar Fruit. The other uncles are also very good. They play very methodically." "Okay, you go and contact them. See if we can arrange a time for us to go and play with them. If we don't play, I'll feel bored." Deng Jian laughed. "Okay, I'll go back and ask my cousin." And Ziming nodded. Chapter 71. Today, Duan Xueqing was very strange, Poplar Fruit thought. He had just called her. Originally, he wanted to go to the old house on a weekend and invite his old neighbors, Lu Gillen and Fong Wenjing, to have a meal. He also wanted her to go with him. However, when Poplar Fruit proposed to go over the weekend, Duan Xueqing was like a frightened rabbit. She directly refused Poplar Fruit's invitation. However, when Poplar Fruit asked her why, she stuttered. In the end, Duan Xueqing was rarely angry. She said, "Anyway, don't come over for a while." Then, she hung up the phone. This made Poplar Fruit feel confused. He could only smile bitterly and cancel his plans for the weekend. Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart, "This girl, don't tell me she has a boyfriend? Could it be that he brought it home? Is it necessary to be so afraid of me finding out?" Of course, Duan Xueching didn't have a boyfriend like Poplar Fruit thought. However, in the past few days, Duan Xueching's mother had come from Jiangnan province. Duan Xueching didn't want her mother to meet Poplar Fruit so early. Jiangnan was located in the coastal area. The mountains and rivers were connected, and it nurtured the unique spirituality and wisdom of the people in Jiangnan. However, because Jiangnan's resources were relatively poor, there were more people than land. Agriculture alone couldn't support the survival of a family. Therefore, many people in Jiangnan were forced to travel north and south, and even go abroad. The hardships of traveling the world not only cultivated their hard-working spirit, but also inspired their enthusiasm for entrepreneurship and adventure. The genes of business flowed in the blood of Jiangnan people, and Duan Xueching's family was the same. Her family owned more than 50 boutiques in Jiangnan, specializing in selling fashionable clothes and bags imported from France. They were also famous in the fashion industry in Jiangnan. Duan Xueching had 2 older brothers. After they graduated from college, they gradually took over the family business under the guidance of their father. Duan Xueching was the youngest girl in the family. Her family loved her very much. They knew that Duan Xueching's cold personality was not suitable for business, so they didn't force her to go home. They just supported her to live the life she wanted. However, it didn't mean that they completely ignored her. Her daughter had been working for almost 2 months. Duan Xueching's mother couldn't stay at home. She was worried that her daughter didn't live well, eat well, and work unhappy, so she took a plane to come to see her daughter. After Duan Xueching's mother arrived, she was a little unsatisfied. Because the place Duan Xueching lived in was too shabby in her opinion. There was only 1 room and 1 living room, and the decorations weren't good either. She was still the little princess of a billionaire family. How could she live in such a small place? After she finished looking at the room Hotel Duan's, Xueching, "Can't rent a good house? We can also buy a house. Live too far away from the place where you work? Then we can buy a car for you. If you don't like Beetles, we can buy a BMW." After Duan Xueching went to college, she wanted to be independent. Especially after she got a job, she didn't want to spend her family's money. There was a deeper meaning, but it was always hidden in Duan Xueching's heart. Duan Xueching's mother wanted to change a better environment for her daughter to live a more comfortable life, but Duan Xueching didn't want to. Because of that, the mother and daughter quarreled. The main reason was that Duan Xueching didn't talk much and didn't like to explain. Under such circumstances, Duan Xueching didn't want her mother to see Poplar Fruit and Kiki. Duan Xueching's mother was experienced. If she knew the existence of Poplar Fruit, she would know what Duan Xueching was thinking. More importantly, Poplar Fruit already had a daughter. If Duan Xueching's mother knew that, the consequences would be unimaginable. Duan Xueching knew Poplar Fruit well. If Poplar Fruit heard that his mother was coming, he would definitely invite Duan Xueching's mother to have a meal. He always thought that he was a big brother. He didn't understand a woman's mind at all. Duan Xueching was annoyed by the quarrel with her mother. She didn't want to explain too much to Poplar Fruit, so she pretended to be angry and hung up the phone. She didn't want Poplar Fruit to come over. However, after hanging up the phone, Duan Xueching began to worry again. What if Poplar Fruit misunderstood? Was it bad of me to lose my temper just now? What if he thought that I was a girl who liked to throw tantrums and hated me? Duan Xueching hugged her knees and sat on the bed. She was full of worries. Her long hair was spread on the pillow, and the light reflected a dark luster on it. Poplar Fruit didn't know what Duan Xueching was thinking. He didn't hate her as much as Duan Xueching was worried about. Poplar Fruit just thought that these were just small waves in life. They were nothing to worry about. Recently, he learned a new skill to tease Kiki: singing. Originally, he used his mobile phone and small speaker to play songs for Kiki. Kiki really liked to listen to it. However, he found out 2 days ago that Kiki preferred to listen to her father sing for her. Moreover, he wanted to sing in front of her. The recording couldn't fool Kiki. Poplar Fruit didn't expect that Kiki would burst out with such enthusiasm as soon as he started to sing. At that time, he was humming Adele, an English female singer who became popular this year. Adkins sings, "Someone Unders Like Unfu." This song was just released at the beginning of this year, and it occupied the first position in the major charts. The faint sadness under Adele's magnetic voice made this song popular all over the world. Although there was only the piano accompaniment, this song was sung by Adele with a very rhythmic feeling. It was like reciting a long poem, and the cadence was very pleasant to listen to. Poplar Fruit walked in front of the rocking chair with a book in his hand. He pinched his voice and sang the climax of the song, "Don't forget me, I beg, I remember you said, sometimes it's last in love, sometimes it's hurts instead." At this time, Kiki suddenly shook her little hand excitedly and squealed. At first, Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to it. When he walked over, his eyes lit up and he turned his head. Unsure, Poplar Fruit squatted down in front of the rocking chair and looked into Kiki's big, beautiful eyes. He sang the 2 lines of the song again and said in his heart, "Kiki, one more time for Papa to see." Looking at her father and being influenced by her father's singing, Chi-Chi kicked her little feet and her eyes turned into 2 crescent moons. She opened her little mouth and called out, "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh." Although she didn't know which plane Chi-Chi was calling out in, Yang Gua could clearly distinguish that the rhythm of Chi-Chi's calling was the rhythm of her own singing just now. It was exactly the same. At that time, Poplar Fruit was shocked. Was his daughter that amazing? As a person who had always sung out of tune since childhood, Poplar Fruit found hope in his daughter. He was a born musician. At only 4 months old, she could grasp the rhythm so accurately. When she grew up, she would definitely become a singer on the same level as Deng Li-jun. Chi-Chi was a genius, and Yang Gua was proud of her. Then, he began to giggle and fantasize about his daughter's appearance on the stage in the future. No matter what the future held, from now on, Poplar Fruit would cultivate Kiki's singing ability. Of course, at this time, Kiki couldn't be considered to be singing. She could only be said to be humming along with Poplar Fruit. In order not to mislead his daughter, Poplar Fruit specially chose some simpler songs, even nursery rhymes. He also secretly hid in the study and practiced with the original singer for a long time. When he felt that he couldn't sing out of tune, he came to play with Kiki. And Kiki also liked this kind of interaction. Every time, she would happily sing along with Poplar Fruit. Towards the end of the song, Kiki was so tired that her little head kept nodding. After all, a baby's energy was still a little lacking. Today, Poplar Fruit and Kiki sang a very classic nursery rhyme, "Only Mommy is Good in the World." The reason why it was a classic was because this song had been sung since Poplar Fruit's parents' generation when they were young. Only Mommy is good in the world. After singing the first line, Poplar Fruit felt that something was wrong. He was the only father in the family now. Where did the mother come from? If this song was remembered by Kiki, what would he do if she didn't call him Daddy but Mommy in the future? And what if she cried and asked him for Mommy in the future when she was sensible? Yes, he couldn't sing like this. Poplar Fruit thought to himself. Kiki's long eyelashes fluttered in confusion as she looked at her father. Why did he stop singing after just 1 line? Don't worry. Poplar Fruit smiled as he patted Kiki's little head. The hair on her head was so comfortable to touch. He sorted out the lyrics in his heart and removed the word Mommy and replaced it with Daddy. Only Daddy is good in the world. A child with a father is like a treasure. Poplar Fruit sang 2 lines, then stopped and looked at Kiki. Aha! Kiki's eyes flashed. She pouted her little mouth and hummed, "Ah, ah, aha." Well sung. Poplar Fruit smiled as he clapped his hands to give Kiki some encouragement. Now singing was a game that Poplar Fruit and Kiki played every day. Every day after taking a bath, when the sun was setting, Poplar Fruit would take her to the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. They would wave their little hands and sing slowly. The setting sun seeped in through the gaps between the green wisteria on the balcony. Accompanied by Chi-Chi's light singing voice that resembled the song of a cuckoo, it slowly flowed over the father and daughter pair. The warm air was filled with a faint fragrance. He thought that after a few weekends, he would continue his daily life like this. But in the evening, his friend, Ah Feng, knocked on his door and told him that his cousin's school team wanted to invite Poplar Fruit and Uncle Jean to play basketball this weekend. Poplar Fruit was willing. It would be very interesting to be able to play with a master. But except for him, everyone else had work. He couldn't guarantee whether they would be free. So Poplar Fruit asked Ah Feng to wait first. Today, Song Jiwen went home and wasn't across the street. He called Song Jiwen first. When he heard that he was playing basketball with the school team of Guangdong University of Technology, Song Jiwen agreed. He said that there was no problem on the weekend. Saturday and Sunday were fine too. Next, he called Uncle Jean. Uncle Jean was also interested in this opportunity as he also liked to play basketball. Uncle Jean told Poplar Fruit that the three of them were usually free on the weekend, but it was better to wait for him to confirm. While waiting for Uncle Jin's reply, Ah Feng said to Poplar Fruit excitedly, "Brother Yang, when you play basketball, can I join your team? I can be a substitute too?" For his cousin's school team, Ah Feng had been admiring it for a long time. He had always regarded Guangdong University of Technology as his goal. He wanted to enter this university through the college entrance examination, then join the school team and compete in the national competition like his brother. Now that he had the opportunity to compete with them, how could he not be excited? Poplar Fruit smiled and patted him on the shoulder. He said, "Don't worry. If we make an appointment to play basketball, you will definitely be one of us." Soon, Uncle Jean called back. His hearty laughter came from the receiver. "Little Young, I asked the two of them. Let's set the date for this Saturday?" "This Saturday. Okay, I will let them know." Poplar Fruit put down the phone and nodded at Ah Feng with a smile. After getting a positive answer, Ah Feng jumped up excitedly. Chapter 72. Poplar Fruit made an appointment with the Guangdong University of Technology school team to play basketball. He was looking forward to the weekend. When he went out to exercise in the morning, he even brought along a basketball to play a few rounds. He felt like he was sharpening his knife for the game. However, before the weekend came, he received a call from Ingyan Network. The person who called was the same customer service lady from Ingyan Network. When he picked up the phone, Poplar Fruit's heart was beating wildly. "Mr. Poplar Fruit, first of all, I would like to congratulate you. You have successfully passed our last round of assessment." The customer service lady's voice was very excited. She paused for a moment, but Poplar Fruit was already in ecstasy. "Did I really succeed?" Poplar Fruit could not believe his ears. Although his translation ability was one of the best in Cinder Company, he had never translated any books. His works had never been tested by the market. Yet, he had passed 3 rounds and defeated hundreds of people to successfully become the translator of sect leader Qiao's biography. It was amazing. Although Poplar Fruit was very confident in his own ability, it felt so good to be recognized by others. This was probably the closest he had ever been to his idol. Poplar Fruit did not know what to say. The customer service lady continued, "In other words, you have been selected as one of the translators of Steve Jobs' biography. Next, we need you to sign a translation contract with us and a new confidentiality contract." "Wait, please wait," Poplar Fruit interrupted the customer service lady. He frowned and asked, "That's not right. Did you just say one of the translators? Could it be that there are other interpreters besides me?" The customer service lady flipped through the form in her hand and replied, "Yes, Mr. Poplar Fruit. There are a total of 4 translators selected. Do you have any questions about the results?" "Of course I do." Poplar Fruit roared in his heart. It was fine if there were not only 1 translator, but 4 translators for 1 book. What was going on? Poplar Fruit did not believe in team translation the most. In the past, When he was in university, he had also done a similar project. A few people would translate a document together. In the end, when they saw the expression on the teacher's face when he gave them marks, it was really difficult. Now that he thought about it, that translation could really be thrown into the water. The first problem with team translation was that the level of the people working together would be uneven, so there would be a big gap in the translation after the summary. Of course, this time, there were so many people for Dongxin Publishing and Yaoyan to choose from, so there probably wouldn't be too much of a difference. Secondly, every translator's translation style is different. Some prefer to be more straightforward, while others prefer to be more scholarly. Some prefer to change the style of the original text, while others prefer to use the author's method of expression. Some translate with a strong accent, while others prefer to use an easy-to-understand language style, and so on. There are many more. These differences are common. It is not only caused by different language education, but also related to everyone's preferences. Translator's notes, 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 translator's notes. Poplar Fruit asked in confusion, "Why 4 translators?" The customer service girl explained, "Because this book needs to be translated for a lot of words, and time is tight. It needs the cooperation of multiple translators to complete it." "That won't do," Poplar Fruit shook his head. "Can't I do it alone? I'm very fast at translating." Sorry, Mr. Poplar Fruit, I don't have the right to make such a decision. This project is really important, and we can't be careless. You can think about it again. In fact, for translators are also very good. You don't have to work so hard. Everyone can work together to complete such a book that is destined to attract the attention of the whole country. What a sense of achievement. Right. The customer service girl tried to persuade Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, but he still couldn't convince himself. He said to the customer service girl, "How about this? You report to the higher-ups and tell them what I think. I think that's such a good book. If 4 translators work together to translate it, the final result may not be satisfactory. If they still decide to use 4 translators in the end, I'm willing to withdraw from this project, although this project is really important to me." After hanging up the phone, Poplar Fruit lay on the sofa and sighed deeply. If he couldn't do his best, he didn't want to be involved and become a member of the team that destroyed it. Poplar Fruit didn't know that his phone call caused a huge debate at Dongxin Publishing. Several chief editors and associate editors even slammed the table and argued. These things happen thousands of miles away. Poplar Fruit only knew that the next morning, when he came back from exercising and bought breakfast, he saw a woman standing in front of his house. A very handsome woman. She looked to be in her mid-20s. She had short hair with neat bangs and a clean and flawless oval face. Her facial features looked a little delicate with light makeup on. She was also dressed very fashionably. Her black leather jacket and skinny jeans matched her very individuality. At first glance, she was the representative of a fashionable woman in the city. Beautiful was ashamed in front of her. The word handsome was even more appropriate to describe a man. However, Poplar Fruit had never seen such a woman before. She was holding a Gucci bag in one hand and a suitcase in the other. What was she doing standing in front of his house? Poplar Fruit looked at her confusedly as he carried the porridge, buns, and basketball and walked over. The woman looked at Poplar Fruit with vigilance. Then she put down the suitcase with her right hand and took out her iPhone from the bag. She opened the screen and looked at it. "Excuse me, who are you looking for?" Poplar Fruit scratched his hair that was wet with sweat and asked. "This is Jinli District Apartment, Block 13, Room 503, right?" Her accent had a strong Beijing accent. "Yes. My home." Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "You are Poplar Fruit?" The woman compared the phone in her hand and asked. Poplar Fruit frowned. He thought, could it be that she met a salesperson? Even his name had been thoroughly investigated. But that's not right. I've never seen a salesperson with a Gucci bag. He also felt that the woman in front of him, who was not even as tall as his shoulder, was not a threat. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, "Yes, I am Poplar Fruit. May I ask who you are?" The woman's face finally relaxed. She stretched out her right hand gracefully and said, "Great, I finally found you. I am the Deputy Chief Editor of Dongxin Publishing. My name is Zhang Yujie." Oh. It turned out that she was from Dongxin. Poplar Fruit suddenly realized. He was also surprised. He had just expressed his attitude yesterday. Why did someone come today? He looked at Zhang Yujie's right hand, smiled awkwardly and said, "Miss Zheng, let's wait a moment. You see, I have so many things now, and I am sweating all over. Let's go in and talk." Zhang Yujie smiled indifferently, then stepped back. Poplar Fruit hurried to open the door. The two of them were almost standing together. Zhang Yujie could only feel the strong masculine smell of Poplar Fruit. She blushed and stepped back quickly. Poplar Fruit opened the door and let Zhang Yujie in. He put the breakfast on the table and asked, "Miss Zheng, did you come from Beijing?" "Yes, I arrived early this morning." Zhang Yujie stood in the living room and looked at the decorations in the house. "You didn't fly here just for me, did you?" Yonggua joked. "It's all because of you." Zhang Yujie glanced at him and said with a little dissatisfaction, "I also took the midnight flight." Well, it was true. Poplar Fruit was a little flattered. Although the woman in front of him looked a little young, according to her, she was the deputy chief editor of a publishing house. Poplar Fruit was touched by her attitude and the importance she attached to him that made a deputy chief editor fly across half of China overnight to find him. Well, of course, he was a little skeptical. This kind of thing sounded a little mysterious. Zhang Yujie turned her head and saw a little doubt in Poplar Fruit's eyes. She handed her business card to Poplar Fruit and said, "See, I didn't lie to you, right?" There was a little dissatisfaction in her tone. She was a little rude. Poplar Fruit didn't mind. He took the business card and looked at it. The card was beautifully made with golden thread. It really did have the address of Dongxin Publishing and her title. It should be real. However, it was the first time he saw such a young deputy chief editor. From the way she spoke, it felt like she was a person with an unruly personality. Maybe she was the daughter of an official. If that was the case, then it made sense. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want to delve into it, so he didn't ask. "Miss Zheng, have you eaten breakfast?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Not yet. I'm starving. Do you have fried dough sticks and soy milk?" Zhang Yujie sat down at the table and looked at the breakfast Poplar Fruit bought. This person really didn't treat herself as a guest. Poplar Fruit was just asking politely, but she just sat down. "Well, who told me to be hospitable?" Poplar Fruit answered honestly, "No, there's only steamed buns and congee with century egg and pork." She was disappointed and said, "Only steamed buns and congee? I don't like them." Then she put one hand on the table and held her cheek. She tilted her head and looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Do you want me to cook noodles for you? You're from the north, so you should be used to eating noodles, right?" "It's okay, as long as you don't cook instant noodles for me," Zhang Yujie said with a smile. Thus, Poplar Fruit took out a tomato and an egg from the fridge and cooked a bowl of noodles for Zhang Yujie. The red shredded tomato and white and yellow egg floats on top of the soup. It looked delicious. Poplar Fruit washed a pair of clean chopsticks and brought it over. "Miss Zheng, I'm sorry. You came in a hurry and didn't prepare anything delicious. I can only treat you to noodles," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "It's okay, I ate too much noodles." Zhang Yujie picked up the chopsticks and smelled the tomato and egg noodles. It was too fragrant. When she lived outside in the past, she didn't cook noodles that smelled so good. "What?" Poplar Fruit sat opposite her and took the bowl. He seemed to have heard her say something about being old. He raised his head and asked in confusion. Nothing. Zhang Yujie was too engrossed in watching Poplar Fruit cook noodles that she didn't pay attention and exposed her manly nature. She smiled awkwardly and quickly covered it up. Oh, it's delicious. Zhang Yujie picked up the noodles with her chopsticks and ate it. It was so smooth that she almost didn't need to chew. It tasted as good as shark fin noodles. Eat slowly, eat slowly. Poplar Fruit chewed on a steamed bun and looked at Zhang Yujie with a smile. Then, he handed her a spoon. Chapter 73. Poplar Fruit ate much faster than Zhang Yujie. After all, the noodles had just been cooked, and the soup was still steaming hot. After eating, Poplar Fruit stood up and put the bag in the trash can. He said, "Miss Zheng, take your time to eat. I'm going to take a shower." Zhang Yujie didn't have time to pay attention to him. She was busy devouring the food in front of her. She really didn't treat herself as a guest. Poplar Fruit scratched his head awkwardly. He couldn't do anything about her, so he went back to his room to get a change of clothes. When he came out, Poplar Fruit was still careful. He locked the door of the bedroom where Kiki was sleeping and walked into the bathroom with the key. "I'm full." A few minutes later, Zhang Yujie put down the big bowl and chopsticks. Then she sat on the chair with satisfaction and sighed. "It's so delicious. I didn't expect a man to have such good cooking skills. I really couldn't tell." She didn't even let go of the soup just now. The whole bowl was licked clean by her like a kitten eating food. But after a while, Zhang Yujie frowned and touched her small belly. She said to herself, "Oh, what should I do? I seem to have eaten too much. I must be overweight today. No, I'm going to get fat again. It's all that damn Poplar Fruit's fault. Why did he make it so delicious?" After saying that, she slammed the table with hatred, as if Poplar Fruit was the culprit. Then she became discouraged and muttered, "No, I can't beat him. He's so tall. It's not scientific for a southerner to look like this. I'm already 1.7 meters tall, but I only reach his chest." Recalling the masculine scent of Poplar Fruit at the door, Zhang Yujie's cheeks turned a little red. She pretended to be shy as she covered her hot cheeks and said to herself, "It's not like I haven't seen a handsome guy before. Little Jie, why do you blush so easily?" Suddenly, the sound of a baby crying came from the bedroom. The sound was so loud that even Zhang Yujie, who was separated by a door and a living room, could hear it clearly. "Hey, what's going on?" Zhang Yujie stood up in confusion and took 2 steps forward. "Why is there a child's voice? Could it be a ringtone?" Right away. Daddy will be here soon." Poplar Fruit's voice came from the bathroom. Bang! The bathroom door was pulled open. Poplar Fruit put on his shirt and rushed out impatiently. When he rushed through the living room, he almost collided with Zhang Yujie. Sorry. Poplar Fruit rushed into the bedroom without looking back. He turned the key and opened the door and walked in. Although it was just a glimpse, Zhang Yujie still saw Poplar Fruit's exposed upper body. His thick and powerful chest muscles and well-defined 8-pack abs almost blinded Zhang Yujie's eyes. Poplar Fruit was different from the muscular men she saw in the gym. He was not so thick and strong. When he wore clothes, people would misunderstand him as a tall scholar. His muscles were the kind that didn't show off under his clothes, but if he took them off, they were very beautiful. My daughter would be dazzled. Coupled with his height of about 1.87 meters and long legs, even Zhang Yujie, who had seen a lot in the gym, couldn't help but cover her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. Poplar Fruit had already walked out with Kiki in his arms. Kiki, who had just woken up and didn't see her father, was now in a daze. Her eyelashes were stained with morning dew. Her tear-stained face was very pitiful. "Don't cry, Kiki. Isn't Daddy here? Why are you crying again?" Poplar Fruit coaxed. He gently wiped away the tears on Kiki's face with his left hand. Although she was no longer crying, Kiki still felt a little wronged and confused. She curled her hands in front of her and burrowed her little head into her father's neck. She twisted and turned, especially relying on the smell of her father's body. Seeing that there was another child in the room, Zhang Yujie's eyes widened. She finally understood what the small rocking chair in the room was all about. It wasn't an ornament. That's not right. Didn't his profile say that he was 24 years old and unmarried? Zhang Yujie was confused. Poplar fruit, Zhang Yujie asked hesitantly. This is. Poplar fruit raised his head and smiled. This is my daughter, Kiki. Zhang Yujie only felt a large herd of alpacas running through her heart. Why were all the good men in the world married? She said embarrassedly, what about your wife? Will she misunderstand if I'm here? Poplar fruit was stunned. He smiled and said, No, I'm not married. How can I have a wife? Seeing that Zhang Yujie's eyes were even more confused, Poplar fruit could only briefly explain his situation. Every time he met someone, he would have to say it once. Poplar fruit felt that he could prepare a set of speeches and recite it every time. So that's how it is. Zhang Yujie suddenly understood. She praised in her heart, what a man who dares to take responsibility. It's a pity. Ahem, little Jie, you're in love again. While Poplar fruit was making milk powder for Kiki, Zhang Yujie visited Poplar fruit's study. Like Duan Xueqing, she was also shocked by the number of foreign language books in Poplar fruit's study. French, German, Spanish, Portuguese. Looking at Mama Ma's notes, Zhang Yujie could be sure that these books were not placed there to fool people, but that the owner had really read them. Although Zhang Yujie didn't learn languages, she had learned how difficult it was to master a foreign language when she studied English in college for the CET 4 and CET 6 exams. Looking at the 4 foreign language books on Poplar fruit's desk, Zhang Yujie began to worship Poplar fruit. Zhang Yujie also saw a lot of books on translation theory. She nodded in her heart. He's so hardworking. No wonder he's so good at it. I really came to the right place this time. But will he accept my proposal? Zhang Yujie was a little uncertain about this. As the deputy chief editor of Dongxin Publishing, she had also come into contact with some of the leading figures in the academic world. She found that although they were usually very amiable, they had their own persistence in their own professional fields. It could even be said that they were stubborn. Although Poplar fruit was not a leading figure, he was still a very talented person. Would he be as stubborn as them? When everyone sat down, Zhang Yujie stopped dawdling and went straight to the point. Poplar fruit, I'm here this time to personally persuade you to join our project team. Zhang Yujie said. Well, I understand what you mean, but I actually made it very clear yesterday. Either I do it alone, or I have to quit. With 4 people, it really affects the quality of the translation. Poplar fruit shook his head and said. Zhang Yujie twisted her body and said with a frown, You know that's impossible. To be honest, we received a notice from the foreign copyright owner a few days ago. Our publishing angle has been set for November 21st this year. It's completely impossible for one person to finish a book with more than 500,000 words. Poplar fruit thought about it. 500,000 words. 2 months. It was indeed impossible for one person to finish it. Even if he translated day and night for a month, he estimated that he could only translate 200,000 words. After all, this was a literary work. It was not an ordinary technical document. The difficulty was more than 3 times higher, it was at least 5 times higher. He shook his head and said, It's really impossible. I can only say sorry. I really don't want 4 people to read it together. You'd better find someone else. Zhang Yujie did not want to give up. She continued stubbornly, Why are you so stubborn? Didn't you want this opportunity very much? It's so rare. How can you give up just like that? I used to think so, but the situation is different now. Poplar fruit said, I don't want such an important book to be ruined in my hands. I'll be scolded in return. But you want others to ruin it? Zhang Yujie stared at Poplar fruit and said, How can you be so irresponsible? Poplar fruit's expression froze. There was a chance. Zhang Yujie saw a crack appear on Poplar Fruit's solid wall. She quickly struck the iron while it was hot and said, "Think about it. You valued this book so much before. It was written by a master appointed by Steve Jobs, and it was the only biography authorized by him. Do you have the heart to destroy it by making everyone translate a translation that you can't even read? You have to know that you once had the chance to save it. Are you willing to stand by and do nothing?" Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "So what? If I don't stand by and do nothing, am I going to be the executioner myself? You can do your best to make us do better," Zhang Yujie said. "What do you mean?" Zhang Yujie smiled. She kept him in suspense and said, "Do you know why I came to you personally?" "Why?" Poplar Fruit had always been curious about this question. "Because you were the first of all the selected translators, because your translation was the only one that could impress all the judges, because only your article made me want to buy it. Do you know? Because of these reasons, I slammed the table and quarreled with my boss yesterday. I don't want anyone else, but I want you." When Zhang Yujie said this, she realized the ambiguity in her last sentence, and her face turned slightly red. "Anyway, that's what I meant, so I flew here from Beijing overnight," Zhang Yujie said. Her words touched Poplar Fruit, but it didn't solve the problem. Poplar Fruit said, "And then? What are you going to do? Don't talk about giving up. Come and help me. I can give you the highest authority. I'll let you be the team leader and consultant of the 4-person translation team. You can do your best to read as many manuscripts as you can. I can also let you do the final touches on the other people's manuscripts. If you feel that something is not right, you can modify it according to your own ideas. What do you think?" Zhang Yujie had thrown away her trump card this time. If Poplar Fruit didn't give in, she didn't know what to do. Under Zhang Yujie's gaze, Poplar Fruit widened his eyes and said, "Are you sure? Don't you think you've given him too much authority? Can it really work?" It was more than just too much. It was as if the whole project was handed over to Poplar Fruit to handle. Zhang Yujie nodded quickly and said, "At present, I'm fully in charge of this book. My words count." Zhang Yujie was indeed the descendant of an official, and her family background wasn't simple. She became the deputy editor at the age of 26. Her family elders contributed a lot, but this also caused her to be questioned by everyone in the publishing house. This was the first time she was leading a team on a project. It was also her chance to prove herself. In order to keep Poplar Fruit, she didn't hesitate to fly overnight from Beijing to Yongqing. In order to do her best, she didn't hesitate to give most of her authority to Poplar Fruit. This time, she had to let everyone see her in a new light. Zhang Yujie, wasn't a second-generation official who only knew how to rely on connections. Poplar Fruit thought for a long time. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked into Zhang Yujie's eyes. He said seriously, "If it's really as you say, I accept." Zhang Yujie was overjoyed. She took out a contract from her bag and said with a smile, "Okay, sign it." Chapter 74. After signing the contract, Poplar Fruit thought that he was going to send Zhang Yujie back on the plane. He didn't expect her to stuff the contract into her bag and start playing with her phone on the sofa. Miss Zheng, aren't you in a hurry to go back?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and asked. Don't call me Miss Zheng. It sounds so unfamiliar. Since we're so close, why don't you call me Yujie?" Zhang Yujie turned over and looked at Poplar Fruit while lying on the sofa. Her buttocks were wrapped in jeans, showing amazing curves, round and elastic. "So familiar? What do you mean by so familiar? They've only known each other for less than 2 hours. Are they familiar?" Although he was cursing in his heart, Poplar Fruit could only call out honestly, "Yujie, aren't you in charge of this project? Why aren't you in a hurry to go back? Yujie, what's the name? Why does it sound like Sister You? And like Sister You? Isn't that so? No hurry. I'll go back tomorrow. When I ran out, I already made arrangements for them. Since it's the weekend, there aren't many things to do. Just treat it as a vacation. Zhang Yujie rolled her eyes and stared at Poplar Fruit's handsome face and said, "Little Fruit, do you not welcome me?" "How could that be? Ha ha ha." Poplar Fruit scratched his head and laughed dryly. The lady in front of him really didn't treat him as an outsider. Moreover, she had the intention of taking over his place. Poplar Fruit was reduced to being addressed as a eunuch. All right, Poplar Fruit could only go back and do his own things according to his plan. As for Zhang Yujie, she could do whatever she wanted. But not long after, Zhang Yujie followed him to Poplar Fruit's study like a shadow. She was like a curious baby, asking questions. "Hey, little Guazi, did you really learn so many languages? Hey, little Fruit, did you write all the notes in this book? Hey, little Fruit, why are you so good at reading? Did you eat some great recovery pill? Hey, little Fruit, what are you doing now?" Poplar Fruit was annoyed. His mood was like the Monkey King in Journey to the West. He really wanted to get rid of this fly, who was buzzing around like a monk. But he couldn't. He still had to accompany her and answer her questions. Who told him to sign a contract to sell himself to her? The world really wasn't peaceful. Yongguo's face was covered in tears. During lunchtime, Song Jiwen's family study. "Calm, Poplar Fruit. Who's that woman?" He couldn't stand it anymore. So he couldn't stand it any longer. He couldn't stand to the end of it. To Zheng's, "Who's that woman outside?" "Calm. Zheng, tease, who?" "After you broke up with your ex, the woman at home kept coming over." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What's that?" "She's my boss." "Boss, do you understand? She came from Beijing yesterday to sign a contract with me." "She flew from Beijing to sign a contract with you? Is there such a boss?" Song Jiwen looked at Poplar Fruit from head to toe and said, "I think you've become more handsome. Didn't you see the way that woman looks at you? I think she's here for you." "That's not true. She just met me for the first time this morning." "Don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, it'll be bad if I can't get off the stage," Poplar Fruit said. "Anyway, take it easy. But the woman outside looks good. She's got character. You can consider her." "Really? Ouch." Before Song Jiwen could finish his words, he was kicked out by Poplar Fruit. After lunch, Song Jiwen spent 2 hours to pick up Kitten from Xiushan District. Because there was a game in the afternoon, Poplar Fruit had to ask her to take care of Kiki. Hearing that Poplar Fruit was going to play basketball, Zhang Yujie followed him with great interest. Holding a big purple umbrella, she and Kitten pushed Kiki to sit on the bench next to the court. When they arrived, the 5 members of the school team of Guangdong University of Technology were already waiting there. Uncle Jean and Ah Feng brought them in. Before the game started, they were all warming up for the relay layup. Seeing Poplar Fruit and Song Jiwen coming over, and Ziming also came up to them and introduced them. "Brothers, this is Poplar Fruit, and this is his brother, Song Jiwen. Poplar Fruit, Jiwen, this is my captain, Deng Jian, and our team's members, Zhang Jie, Qiu Xin, and Dong Xiaofang." And Ziming introduced the team members standing together one by one. Poplar Fruit reached out and shook hands with Deng Jian. He smiled and said, "Nice to meet you." Before Deng Jian could speak, Dong Xiaofang, who was a little taller than Poplar Fruit, interrupted and said, "Poplar Fruit, I heard from Brother Ming that you are very good. We must learn from each other later." Deng Jian hit him on the head and said with a smile, "You little brat, are you trying to steal my limelight? Poplar Fruit, don't mind him. Our team members are a little straightforward. They speak frankly, but they mean no harm." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's okay. I like people who speak frankly." When the 3 uncles arrived, Poplar Fruit, Song Jiwen, Ah Feng, and the 3 uncles gathered in one half of the court to warm up and discuss tactics. "The opposite side is a little tall. This game is going to be difficult," Uncle Dao said with a serious face. Except for Poplar Fruit, the rest of their team was less than 1.8 meters tall. On the opposite side, the 5 people were all more than 1.8 meters tall, and 3 of them, Deng Jian, and Ziming, and Dong Xiaofang, were taller than Poplar Fruit. Deng Jian was estimated to be 1.95 meters tall. "Don't worry, we have Poplar Fruit as the inside line," Uncle Gene said with a smile. Poplar Fruit also said with a fire in his eyes, "That's right. Look at me for the rebound." "Let's discuss how to play," Uncle Gene said. "Let's assign who will play which positions." Song Jiwen said, "I think we shouldn't be fixed with only one point guard, because their basic skills are definitely better than ours. With only one person controlling the ball, it's easy to be robbed." "That's right. Jiwen, why don't you and Aben play the double point guard?" Uncle Gene said with appreciation. Uncle Dao smiled and said, "I can only play outside. I can't get inside. If you see me run to an empty spot, then pass the ball to me." Uncle Dao's shooting was as accurate as a scalpel. If he could hit a few more, it would be easier to play. "I'm a substitute. I can play outside." Ah Feng raised his hand and said. Uncle Gene laughed and said, "Don't worry, there will definitely be a chance for you to play. The 3 of us are old bones. We'll probably be exhausted running the whole court. When the time comes, don't complain that there aren't enough substitutes." He turned his head and asked Poplar Fruit, "Poplar Fruit, what are you going to do? Are you going to play center?" Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, "I'll play small forward when I'm on offense and center when I'm on defense." He planned to use himself as James when he was on offense. Facing a school team that was strong in basketball, if others couldn't open it, then he would have to break through. "Well, that's good. Then I'll control the inside line with you." Uncle Gene nodded and said, "What we're saying now is just a warm-up. The tactics we'll implement later still depends on the strength of the opponents on the court." Poplar Fruit laughed. "Yes, we'll just adapt to the situation." Song Jiwen echoed. After the discussion, Poplar Fruit and the others warmed up in their own half of the court, stretching their ligaments to prevent injuries during the whole court run later. At this time, a lot of spectators gathered on the sidelines. Most of them were basketball enthusiasts in the community. They had heard the news from each other. Although there was an empty court next to them, no one went to play. After playing so many times, the basketball players in the community knew that the strongest among them were Poplar Fruit and the other 5. When the 6 of them stood together, they almost replaced everyone in the community. Today, they were going to play the strongest player in the University of Guangdong. How could they be willing to miss such a wonderful game? Before the game began, Deng Jian came over and followed Uncle Gene and Poplar Fruit. He said, "Uncle Gene, Poplar Fruit, let's have a meal together after the game. I'm sorry to trouble you on such a hot day." "Haha, don't be so polite. It's our honor to play with you," Uncle Gene said with a smile. No, it's necessary to treat. When we play basketball, victory is secondary. Friendship comes first. After the game, having a meal together won't affect your other things, right?" Deng Jian deserved to be the captain of the University of Guangdong Polytechnic University. His words and actions made people feel very comfortable. "Okay." Uncle Gene looked at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. He then said, "After the game, let's have a meal together. I'll treat you. Don't fight with me. The people here are not poor. You have to pay for it, right? You said that playing basketball is about friendship. If you keep talking about money with me, it will hurt our friendship." Haha. Deng Jian laughed heartily. "I won't mention it. Thank you in advance, Uncle Gene." He paused and then said, "You also know that we still have to play games after school starts. If we get injured, it will affect the game. So, on the court later, please be merciful. The main thing is that everyone has to have fun. Don't worry, we won't do too much. But you have to be merciful. We are a few old bones, and we can't withstand the vitality of young people like you." Uncle Gene laughed. "Well, friendship comes first." Deng Jian clenched his fist and smiled. After he left, Uncle Gene said to Poplar Fruit with emotion, "Their captain is a character. He has a good family education. It's amazing if he doesn't play basketball in the future." Poplar Fruit looked at Uncle Gene in confusion and asked, "Why do you say that? What do you think he wanted to say to me just now?" Uncle Gene patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and asked with a smile, "Didn't he say about the meal?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. Suddenly, Yongwa reacted first and said with a sudden realization, "Oh, I understand. He wants us to not hurt their players when we play basketball. So that's his real purpose." "That's right." Uncle Gene nodded approvingly. "You understand quite quickly. He just beat around the bush and said so much just to talk about this. But he said it very skillfully, right? You don't feel that it's harsh when you hear it." Poplar Fruit nodded. Indeed, Deng Xian's way of doing things made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. It was easy to feel that he was a very worthy friend. You can learn from his good points. Uncle Gene educated Poplar Fruit like an elder. He smiled and said, "Someone in his family should be a leader, so he has been influenced by this. His words and actions are very methodical." "Well, I understand." Poplar Fruit nodded solemnly. This was just a small interlude. Both sides were ready. Poplar Fruit and Deng Xian walked to the center circle to prepare for the jump ball. An uncle, who was acting as a guest referee, walked to the center with the basketball. The audience on the sidelines held their breaths and looked at them nervously. The battle was about to start. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.